Minnesota School Board Association has set aside this week as the National Recognition Week in Minnesota as a time to build awareness and understanding of the vital function as an elected Board of Education and the role they play in our society. Stillwater Area Public Schools is joining all schools across the state to celebrate School Board Recognition Week to honor our local board members for their commitment to our students and Stillwater area schools, families, and community. Thank you, school board members. And our school board members have certificates, but they're in their folders, and we aren't going to present them this evening. Also, I'd like to mention that tomorrow is our, tomorrow is our ALC graduation. We're very proud of our students and our staff who have helped them along their journey. They'll be graduating at 11 o'clock at the high school. So those of you who are interested in attending, we'd love to have you celebrate our students' accomplishments with our staff and families. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and we are on to our student report. Elise, are you first or Kulak?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as some of you guys may know, last week was this whole entire week was Black History Month, is still, but it was also last week. And so some of our focus was on Black history and teaching our peers about Black excellence, and also about the need to move towards more sustainable lifestyle and how we can do so, and also mental health awareness. But overall, there was other things that were happening that week. It was especially hard, and we all were just there for each other, and we wanted to continue. We want to continue doing that.
So some highlights from last week. We had the first generation panel. So a few students were talking about and sharing their experience as first generation students at our school, and Kulik was actually on that panel, so that was really fun to watch. And then we had a big talent show on the last day of last week. A girl named Shay won, and she is actually playing Belle in Beauty and the Beast. So make sure to keep your eye out for that. It's coming in the spring. And then we had a few Black History Month presentations. Earlier in the week, we had Tony Carr's presentation, and he gave one last year as well, and both years it's been amazing to have him. And then we had the annual Black History celebration put on by Mr. Call, which is one of me and Kulik's favorite events of the week. And so just in that, we had 2019's New Artist of the Year, Nerdy, perform, Robert Robinson, who is a gospel singer from the Twin Cities. And then we had original poems and musical performances from a various amount of our peers. And then we had the Heritage Fashion Show, so we had almost 30 student models just celebrating their heritage by wearing traditional clothing. And that was actually followed by Asian Student Union's Asian fruit tasting, and I know a lot of students really enjoyed that. And it was just really fun to see a few of you board members at some of our events, and Superintendent Pontarelli, that was really awesome that you guys showed some support for us. And then Kulik's going to talk about a few more things.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, actually, our Story Arc, or a lot of our peers at Story Arc, actually awarded Superintendent Pontarelli an award, and so it was really great to see you there and knowing that you supported our peers, and they feel very strongly that you're there for them, and they really appreciate that. To end the whole entire week, we had Battle of the Bands, and our senior band, 3rd Street, actually took first place and received the $300 prize. And so this year was their last year. All of them are going their separate ways, but we do have a lot of younger bands who are going to be great next year too.
Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. That sounds so exciting and really, really fun. All right, I think we now have some people to recognize.
Right. We'd like the Gate Lego League team to please come forward. The Stillwater Middle School Lego League team is heading to the state competition.
Woo-hoo.
I'll read you just a quick synopsis of what's happened this year for this group of students. They were selected to advance after strong finishes at the regional and sectional contests where teams were challenged to build an EV3 robot. They competed in several events, including Innovative Research Project, Robot Design and Programming, Core Values, and 3 robot course runs. The team won the Research Project Award for their design of a sustainable park. Students met Lake Elmo Public Works and then presented ideas to the Lake Elmo Parks Commission. They are hopeful that some of their designs, including a splash pad and solar-powered parking lot lights, will be used in the near future in Lake Elmo. They also won the award for innovative architecture for the alligator they created for one of their robot missions and placed second in the course run. The team will compete very soon against the top 66 teams in the state on February 22nd. Congratulations, team. We're glad to have you here.
Congratulations. Thank you so much for being here. This is really, really cool. Do you have something you want to share?
Not really.
That's just fine. You can just tell us your name.
What's your names?
This is Will. That's Owen. That's Coolgis. That's Reedy. And behind me is Wyatt.
Very good. Are you excited?
Yeah.
I see one of you has a trophy already in your hand. What is that for?
This is our innovative architecture trophy.
And another one I see.
And this is our project award.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Well, congratulations, you
Can I
guys.
ask a quick question?
Yeah, go.
I don't know anything about Lego competitions, even though my children absolutely loved Legos. But do you get an assignment when you get there, or how does it work? Do you get it before? Do you have to do it spur of the moment? How do you do it?
We got our assignment like in August. So we've been working on it for a while, and then we go to the competition and compete with either other robots to get high scores, and there's also the project, which most teams will do a skit about their project.
Thank you.
Very
Great
cool.
job.
Yeah. Congratulations, you guys, and good luck.
Can we get the name of the supervisor here? Are you?
My name is Julie Foote, and I'm one of the parents. I've had Kelly Uglum also helping coach, and my husband Andrew has helped out. We also had a little support from some of the high school kids. The robotics team came and mentored the kids
cool.
to help with their
Oh my
programming. These are all fifth graders, and in our school district, they learn about the EV3s in sixth grade. So these kids had a little bit of experience because they came from Gates, so they'd use the NXT robots, but the EV3 was brand new to them this year. So that's a pretty impressive task to go from zero knowledge to making it to the state competition. There are about 660 or 650 teams in the state of Minnesota, so to be in that top 10% in 1 year is pretty impressive.
That is impressive.
Great job.
Congratulations.
Thank you for helping make that. Thank you so much. All right. All right. Okay. Next on our agenda is the open forum. If you wish to speak to the school board, you will be able to do so at the start of the school board meeting during open forum. You may sign in only for yourself, not other individuals or groups, and only in person. The sign-in sheet is made available 30 minutes prior to and up to the start of the meeting. Due to time limitations, we will limit the number of speakers to 15, with each speaker receiving 3 minutes. If you spoke at the last meeting, please consider allowing others to sign in before you. After you address the board, please leave the podium. Stillwater Area School District welcomes input from citizens as community involvement fosters better decision-making and improved learning experiences for all students. While comments and questions are welcome during open forum, law prohibits the board from discussing concerns about individual employees or students in a public meeting. We will stop the proceedings immediately if employee or student privacy issues are raised and direct the speaker to forward comments regarding individual employees or students to the superintendent. Because we are modeling civil discourse for our community, speakers must present their testimony in a respectful manner. Vulgarity, character attacks, malice, or specific complaints identifying staff or students by name or implication will not be permitted. The board will not deliberate, discuss, or engage in conversation with speakers during open forum. However, the board may ask administration to review the concerns that are presented. Thank you. And with that, we will begin with our first speaker, and that is Denise Stevens.
Chair Stivland, members of the board, and Superintendent Pontrelli. Good evening. My name is Denise Stevens. I'm a Stillwater Area Schools parent and grandparent, and I live in Lake Elmo. As you know, I'm also a consultant with Stillwater Native American Parent Advisory Committee, NAPAC, a committee of this board that advises and oversees the school district's American Indian Education Program. Recently, the NAPAC members voted unanimously to approve the Minnesota Department of Education's mandatory annual compliance overview document, which states that, quote, the school board and district are meeting the needs of American Indian students. Because Superintendent Pontrelli and Chair Stivland recently signed and submitted the compliance agreement to MDE, I thought this would be a good opportunity to do a quick review of the work and progress of our American Indian Education Program plan for the first half of the school year. And I would like to come back at the end of the school year with a larger wrap-up. Our annual plan focuses on three main areas: authentic cultural teaching for all students, community engagement, and addressing the achievement gap for Native American students. So far this school year, Stillwater NAPAC members, elders, parents, and cultural content experts have taught more than 925 Stillwater students in classrooms, grades 2 through 12, for a total of 2,935 learning hours. We will be working with teachers to provide additional cultural learning opportunities for the remainder of the school year as requested by teachers. Stillwater NAPAC continues to build community around Native cultural teachings. In addition to our community events, NAPAC members also participate annually in the Partnership Plans Da Vinci Fest. Organizers estimated more than 1,100 people participated in Da Vinci Fest this year. Stillwater NAPAC continues to work with parents and students to address the achievement gap for Native American students through cultural learning opportunities. For example, Native American students take classes at Story Arc. High school students made traditional ribbon garments, and students and adults are now engaged in a Lakota herbal medicine class. As you consider and vote to approve the Equity and Integration Plan this evening, I want to personally thank Superintendent Pontrelli, Rachel Larson, and Eric Anderson for actively involving our Native American community to help develop the school district's World's Best Workforce Plan. School district administration has also included Native voices in the Superintendent's Advisory Committee, which is building a more welcoming learning environment for all students. Our NAPAC annual plan is closely linked to this important work. Finally, I want to confirm that your Stillwater Native American Parent Advisory Committee wholeheartedly supports the Equity and Achievement 3-year plan you are voting on tonight. Superintendent Pontrelli and members of the board, thank you for your ongoing support of our work in the schools and community and for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next name is Rick Weirich.
Superintendent Pontrelli, board members, Chair Stivland. My name is Rick Weirich, and I was a participant on the community design team. I'm speaking tonight in order to address one aspect of the community design team's facility recommendation report being presented tonight. I should note, while I currently serve as a township supervisor for Baytown Township, I am here representing my own personal opinions and not to deliver a message from Baytown Township. On November 28th, 2019, I notified Carissa of my desire to drop as a participant in the CDT. There are a few different reasons behind that decision, but those reasons are not my interest today. My purpose today is to duplicate a request contained in that notification. At that time, I not only dropped from the CDT participation, but I was clear that I was withholding my endorsement of all CDT findings and reports. That is not to say that I was intending to oppose the team's findings, but only that my endorsement was being explicitly withheld at that time. I fully expected to be listed as an attendee for the meetings I attended. But tonight, I again ask that I not be listed as an endorser of tonight's report. Additionally, in order to make support for the report as clear and transparent as possible, the board should consider asking all CDT participants for their explicit endorsement. The list of those who explicitly endorse the report should then be made public. It has been brought to my attention there are other CDT participants with same or similar views as my own, but I have not been authorized to speak on behalf of any of those members. I do suspect all members of the CDT would appreciate an opportunity to control their own personal endorsement of the team's report. Thank you.
Okay, the next name is Christy Mac.
Good evening. According to the Community Design Team proposal, $6.79 million has been proposed to remodel part of Oak Park for administration. I want to go back to the September 13th, 2018 board meeting. I found the following items to be of importance. Number one, former school board member George Hepner read through a list of historical talking points relating to Brookview Central Services in Oak Park. One talking point came from a final report to the board dated March of 2016, which suggested that the district better utilize underutilized spaces of district facilities. One reason we were told bold was necessary was because we had too many underutilized spaces in our schools. Closures would allow our spaces to be used more efficiently. Fast forward to tonight's proposal, moving central services, ALC, and keeping transitions in Oak Park still leaves more than half the available space open. Are we now okay with underutilized spaces, or are underutilized spaces still wasteful and inefficient? Number two, George Hepner and our superintendent both stated from the same list of historical talking points that Oak Park is a centrally located facility that is easily accessible. This is important because there have been many arguments about Oak Park not being useful to help solve our growth issue because it is located north of Highway 36. Who decided that Highway 36 is some kind of dividing line, and what purpose does this narrative serve? Number three, Director Pelletier discussed her concerns about moving central services into Oak Park, leaving us with the inability to ever reopen it as a school. Director Pearson shared the same concern and also commented that we need to do the best we can for students in the most fiscally responsible way possible. Rather than build two new schools, it would be more fiscally responsible to build one and to use an existing resource, Oak Park, saving us roughly $40 to $50 million in the expense of a new building. Central services could be remodeled, a much less expensive endeavor, in order to place the transition and ALC programs there with district staff. This would leave Oak Park open for use as an elementary school. Number four, our superintendent talked about making minimal changes to Oak Park, making its possible return to a school easy. The proposed plan for Oak Park is not a minimal change. Lastly, the executive summary to the board dated September 27, 2018 states, approximately $500,000 more would be needed to renovate the rest of the building for central services staff. It's quite the jump from $500,000 to $6.79 million that the CDT is recommending. This is noted as a high priority project. At almost $7 million to remodel for staff versus an elementary school, this is a deal breaker for most voters. If voters aren't willing to spend $7 million on an administration they can't trust, that also means no Brookview expansion and no new Lake Elmo. To pass a bond, you need support north to south. Reopening Oak Park will go a long way to regain support across the district. We need Oak Park fully utilized as a school. Please reopen it. Thank you.
The next name is Grace Reski. Is it Roski? Sorry.
My name is Grace Rossi. I live in Oak Park Heights, and I'm a 12th grade student at the high school. I'm here representing the AVID program. I didn't join AVID until my junior year, but the amount of impact it has had on me in such a short amount of time has been tremendous. When I joined this program, I was given a new perspective. I was taught that we must celebrate diversity, which is something that can often be overlooked in our school. AVID made me excited to learn and understand others' perspectives. Two of AVID's key strategies that are used not only in our AVID elective class, but school-wide by teachers is inquiry and collaboration. Through intentionally designed collaboration, I was introduced to problems I was never aware of or would never consider because of my skin color. AVID also challenges all students to think inquisitively, to try and understand the why, what if, what next. If it wasn't for AVID, I wouldn't be the student I am today. I wouldn't be as open-minded as I am today, and I wouldn't be curious to know how a situation could affect people differently. AVID strategies are helping fast diversifying schools promote success for its students. I want to help create a more inclusive environment for people of color within my school. A majority of AVID students are students of color and first-generation college students. With the limited resources already available to this population, AVID is a huge part of our growing success, and I urge you to consider this when making your decision tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next name is Jocelyn Levasseur.
Hello, my name is Jordan Levasseur, and I'm a senior at the Stillwater High School. I know you have heard about the statistics side of AVID. Today I want to talk about the emotional side. AVID is a close-knit family-based class. It is where every student and teacher has a connection. I suffer from severe depression and anxiety. All throughout high school, I have felt alone and segregated from everyone else. However, AVID was the one place I did not feel that way. AVID is a home. AVID is a place that changed me for the better. There were days I didn't want to come to school because of my depression. However, I did go to school for AVID. AVID was the one thing I looked forward to every single day. I met so many amazing people in AVID. Another thing about AVID is that it changes your character. It changes the way you look at people. The teachers help you and teach you to work with other people and collaborate with them. AVID is a home away from home. For the students who don't have the best living situation, AVID supplies them with the love and appreciation that they need. I know without AVID, I would not be alive today. Thank you.
My apologies, Jordan, for messing up your name. Thank you so much for speaking today. The next one on the list is Francis Porbenny.
Good evening, Chair Stevens and the rest of the board, and also Superintendent Pontrelli and the leadership team. I have come before you to speak on the 2021-2024 Achievement and Integration Plan. Having reviewed the plan, I believe it helps us in addressing an ongoing question. What is our vision for this community? Is our vision one of making this school district a welcoming and inclusive community for all its citizens? Is it a vision in which every voice is heard and appreciated? Do we want a community that creates and expands academic and learning opportunity for all its students? I want to believe your answer to these questions is yes. To that extent, I urge you to affirm and approve the plan before you. This plan is a continuation of a journey already begun in supporting our students in the district, especially the underserved, both ethnic and economic groups. I'm sure you just heard from the last two speakers. The plan contains some critical elements that will enable us to achieve our vision of being a welcoming and inclusive community where curiosity truly strives. Interesting elements of the plan are the following: AVID, professional development of our teachers to increase their cultural fluency and competence, recruitment of a more diverse teaching staff, and community engagement. Does the plan address all our concerns? Absolutely no. No plan can do that. However, it is building upon the ongoing successful results that is being observed and measured. Let us take advantage of this progress to improve on the goals already stated. Also, I would like to urge you to see this plan as a template, a blueprint from which the school district can learn to scale up such programs as AVID and BAR, especially with AVID, to make it available to all students at the high school, as it teaches life skills that is critical in addressing the challenges of transitioning from secondary to post-secondary institutions. Again, I'm appealing to you to vote in the affirmative for this plan. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Sandi Gainer.
Hello, my name is Sandi Gainer. I'm in Stillwater, Minnesota. So as you know, tonight we're going to hear about the CDT recommendations that some will attest the board must simply move forward for full bore, asking the taxpayers to fund these big asks simply because the community came up with them. So let's talk about that. The board set out to create a group of about 30 or so. They vetted applicants and settled on their decisions. Then we heard that admin, unhappy with the results, campaigned for more members to be added. They did not go back to the original applicants and open up for those interested. They added 50 more members, and already we can see where this would create issues. We've heard members talk about how slanted the conversations were, how certain ideas that didn't match up with the predetermined conclusions were steered away, and they weren't allowed to see the light of day. About how many members left the committee formally and informally by the end, only having 25 left for the final vote. There's a total of $238 million at max in facility projects divided into high, low, medium priorities. Improving Anderson Elementary is considered low priority, while remodeling Oak Park for administrative offices at a tab of $7 million for 20,000 square feet is listed as high priority. Only about a dozen CDT members attended the facility tours at most, and only 8 participated at the Withrow tour, and yet the CDT as a whole decided that the school should be closed. So it's clear that the CDT meetings were driven with an agenda while making it appear that it was community driven. And we know this because the Morris-Leatherman survey, remember that just 5 months ago, they were able to get a much better and less influenced read than the community. So I'll just highlight a few relevant stats. Admin approval rating, 52%. 68% support renovating existing buildings. 70% support expanding existing schools. 52% oppose building new schools. 69% considered a new build to be a bad idea. 82% said they wouldn't even support an operations increase of over $16 a month. 71% said they wouldn't support a facilities tax increase of over $8 a month. Of those two last groups, 60% oppose any increase at all. 3 big takeaways as presented by the Morris-Leatherman survey were, number 1, this community is experiencing growing property tax hostility. You're not the only ones taxing us, you know. Number 2, the approval of the finance spending is stagnant. And number 3, the community has concerns about the administration. A little common sense would tell you it's not looking too good for you to come asking for money anytime soon, never mind the rest of the circus the ringmaster has roped us into. So simply put, listen to your community, since they're the ones who are expected to foot the bill on this wish list. Revisit the Leatherman survey and really ponder how on earth the Cunningham design team worked side by side with administration could have possibly come up to such different conclusions than Leatherman, who went right to the people. The time for the benefit of the doubt is over, and now it's time to face reality. Be smart about what you're asking for. I hope that you guys can humble yourselves while asking us to take a $238 million bond even remotely seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Julie Grundmann.
Julie Grundmann, 105th Street, Stillwater. Good evening, Board Chair Stivlin, Board Directors, Superintendent Pontrelli, and Student Board Representatives. You're about to hear the CDT's final recommendations presented. There have been rumblings and grumblings in certain factions of the district, such as the board had better listen to what the CDT recommends. And many even go so far as to think that the board better accept all of the recommendations, or this has been all a waste of CDT members' time and taxpayer money with this process. Well, let me give you a short list of mismanaged taxpayer money in the school district and who is responsible. In the district's last executive summary, it was stated that the remodel of the media room at Oak Park cost $83,000. In reality, the cost was $244,000. That's a straight line math error of $160,000. On the same page of the executive summary, the district estimated a cost of $500,000 to remodel Oak Park for administration offices. The CDT, however, was told that the Oak Park remodel for administration offices would cost close to $7 million. Using straight line math once again, the difference there amounts to a mere $6.5 million. From the last bond, we had an amount of $3.5 million approved by taxpayers for a new bus terminal. The district has now spent $7 million and counting on this bus garage, and as it turns out, there's a possibility we won't even be able to use it for its intended purpose. So I ask you, of the few examples of this district's monetary abuse and misspending that I've given you, how much of this mismanaged money was supposed to be spent on our kids? What direct benefits would our children have seen had all this money not been wasted away? Bottom line is, we have people in the district office who are making a pattern of misrepresenting how taxpayers' money will be spent and are mismanaging and wastefully spending that money. They're putting before the board poorly thought out, incomplete proposals and presenting them as the only option. There seems to be a hurry-up attitude also that I'm sure is frustrating to you all because you want to make good, sound, informed decisions for the kids. But with a history of bad ideas that cost more money by this administration, how is it possible for you to trust the information you are given to make your decisions? So no matter what or which part of the CDT recommendations you choose to package up and put out to the voters, it's going to be a tough sell. Taxpayers are quite wary of the current district leadership. Unless there are major changes in our district office before the next referendum comes up, there's a great likelihood it will fail to pass. Thank you for your service and good luck.
Thank you, and that's the end of our speakers tonight. Next on our agenda, we have to approve the consent agenda. We have item A, minutes from the meeting of February 6th. Minutes of February 6th business meeting. Item B, we have the minutes of the February 6th closed meeting. Item C, we have the minutes of the January 23rd closed meeting. Item D is the disbursement register. Item E is accepting the gifts and donations for January. Item F is the Human Resources Personnel Report. And item G is the City of Oak Park Heights and Stillwater Area Public Schools Service Agreement for the School Resource Officer at Stillwater Area High School. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Director Pearson moves. Do I have a second? Second. Director Weisberg seconds. All in favor? Raise your right hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on, we have our reports. The Long Range Planning Commission recommendations from Cunningham Group and the Community Design Team.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
Dear Chair Stivland, members of the board, and Superintendent Pontrelli, on behalf of Cunningham Group and the Community Design Team, we wish to express our gratitude for the opportunity to have participated in this master planning process. Tonight we have representatives from the Community Design Team that will share the recommendations, and we're really excited to present those in front of you this evening. But before I turn it over, we'd also like to express our gratitude to the resource guides, along with the community engagement team, and to Kraus Anderson for their guidance during this process. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ted Wegleitner. I'm the president of Lakeview Hospital. I'm the executive leader for the Health Partners, St. Croix Valley Hospitals and Clinics. And if I can get the presentation up.
We gotta get the click share going. Sorry. We gotta minimize that so we can get the activate the click share.
Let's do activity so we can pull this back up the ClickShare app that we had earlier.
So we just,
Yeah.
We have to
Oh.
just double click on it.
It doesn't always go on.
Just double click.
Okay.
There, and then
What is this supposed to be doing, Dad?
It's okay. It's okay. There we go. Okay, so here we go. What I'd like to do is share with you how we're going to spend the next 30 minutes presenting this plan. First, we want to share with you the highest hopes that were gathered from the community design team. We want to share with you the vision for the future that was created by the design team. We want to share with you the process that we used that was fair and inclusive. We want to share with you that this was a data-driven process. And we want to share with you, and this is the bulk of it, a prioritized list of recommendations that came out of this process. So we were chartered to create a master plan. Well, what is a master plan? A master plan is a 10 to 15-year roadmap for the future. It's grounded in ours and your vision for learning. We know it's a living and breathing document. Things change, and it'll have to change over time. We know that. It needs to be physically and fiscally responsible. And finally, it needs to be phased in over time and have a logical implementation timeline. So this is sort of the process that we went through, starting with the resource guides, with all of the input from the various community members, and we're over to the right there with a final recommendation that we're bringing to the school board. Let me tell you a little bit about the process. We had 65 people that started this process. We had parents, students, teachers, principals, community leaders, and business leaders like myself. We had a diverse group, geographically from across the district, racially and ethnically. We had people from different socioeconomic status. We had age differences. We had gender balance in this. So this was a diverse group all around. We met for 7 4-hour evening meetings. In addition to that, a number of community design team members did tours to the various buildings. 1,500 hours of community time was invested in this plan. And let me tell you what I'm most proud of. I'm most proud of how the process invited input from all the participants. Every session, we were at a different table. Every session was filled with small group process to ensure that everybody had a venue to speak up. This is a proven process. Coming in healthcare, from healthcare, where we use processes a lot like this for design of our buildings, for placement of our buildings, this is a process very similar to the processes that we use, led by the school board's selected consultants. And the last thing, and we have it in bold, is this was a consensus-driven process. We looked and insisted upon consensus and finding common ground throughout this process. There is change that we're facing, and we're all aware of that. Lots of change in our community and in education as a whole. And we had to take this into consideration. I'm not going to go over all of them, but there's no question we're seeing demographic changes in our school district. Growth is happening in different, very select areas of the district, and it's not happening in others. We know that our families in this school district have choices. They have choices, they can go other places. We know that there's funding challenges and that we need to be realistic about how much we can handle, how fast. This is a long-range vision for where we're going. We know that we're becoming more and more diverse all the time, and we needed to take that into consideration. We needed to take into consideration that we have mental health challenges, and we want to have environments that support health. And finally, we know technology is changing, dramatically different from when I went to school, and we had to take that into consideration. We also had to set aside some of our beliefs so we wouldn't be paralyzed from the very start. We had to set aside perfection. Perfection is sort of the enemy of progress. So we had to say, we're going to do the best we can. We're going to create the best plan we can. And that's all the better we can do with the data we have right now. No one has a crystal ball. We had to set aside fear, individual fears that people had in this process. We had to set aside we don't have enough money. We know we have to be good stewards of our community's resources, but we couldn't be paralyzed by that either. And we were afraid that it was going to be all talk. So we had to set that aside, that this is just an exercise, an academic exercise, not real, not really leading to action. We had to set that aside. And we had to set aside the fact that attitudes vary in this community and that we weren't going to be able to find common ground. We had to set that aside. And there's a lot of other beliefs that we set aside as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Ava to talk about our vision.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Ava Lutz, and I am a student at Stillwater High School. So at the beginning of this process, coming together, we came together to discover our highest hopes as a community and also as individuals throughout this process and into the future of our district and community as a whole. And through this process, we were able to gather the highest hopes of individuals, small groups, and the larger group as a whole to reflect the ways in which we wish our school, in which we aspire to change over the course of many years and our highest hopes for how we should do this. And so we thought about the many ways that this may benefit students in our early childhood centers, our elementaries, middle schools and high schools, the staff within our district, and our community as a whole, because our schools fundamentally are a reflection of this. And so throughout this, we came up with that our highest hopes for this was that this would be a unifying vision for all of us throughout the community, because there is common ground to find within this, and that this should be a process that collaborates with many different types of people from many different backgrounds, that it's driven by data to find a result. It embraces equity, it's looking forward, and it's fiscally responsible with our resources. That way, as a whole, this describes our highest hopes as a group and as a community. And so throughout this, some of the specifics that we had embraced were that this should be inclusive for students across the district as a whole, sustainable long-term, that this should be equitable across our community, and many other factors that we had talked about throughout this process. And so this was the statement, these were some statements that we came up with within groups about what we see as a potential future for our community and what we aspire towards. And together, this is the vision statement that we created, that we hope to enhance the dreams and aspirations of our students, teachers, and community in building an innovative, diverse, inclusive, flexible, accessible, collaborative, engaged, and sustainable future for all. So it's clear that we had some really big hopes and an even larger sentence, but altogether, when we came through this process, we really wanted to make sure that it reflected the goals and the hopes of our community in a broader sense.
Hi, good evening. My name's Dan O'Connor. I'm a parent in the district of 2 students who attend our schools, and we wanted to highlight some pieces of data that were presented to the community design team. These come from 2 studies that the school board commissioned. One is from the 2013-14 year, and one was from 2018-19. We wanted to put this in front of you. There's more, obviously, in the report, but there's some real highlights, I think, that will help frame the recommendations that you're going to see in a little bit. So what you see here is a map of our district, and on the left-hand side you see the full district. Obviously we're pretty long north to south and fairly narrow east to west, and the pinpoints that are a little tough to see, but you can make them out, those are there to indicate where our students live, where they're located. And so you can see that obviously we have concentrations in certain areas, and we have more sparsely populated areas of the district, so it's obviously not even. And then when you look across to the right, you have a blown up section of a portion of the lower part of the district. And the idea there is you can see a little bit closer that there's significant pockets of density with regard to parts of the district. So this is current state. This is where the students are now. What we also wanted to make sure that you had in front of you is this is where the students are likely to be coming from, the new growth in our district. So what you have here is this is a bubble chart or a heat map, and the intent is the size of the bubble indicates the number of new homes that are going to be coming online in our district in the near future. The bigger the bubble, the more the homes. The blue ones are single-family homes. The yellow is townhouses. And then we have different types of housing stock as well. But there's a couple things I really want to emphasize. Focus on the map on the left. Where are the bubbles? They're concentrated in the middle and the southern portion of our district. That's where we're going to see more homes being built, and with those homes are going to have additional children. And if we want to be able to capture those children in our district, we're going to need to be able to offer them compelling schools that they can attend. In addition to that, look at the size of the bubbles on the map, the excerpt on the right. If you look to see where our current schools are located, focus at Brookview down in the south. The largest bubble, or second largest bubble here on the chart at the bottom is 240 new homes that are going to be built in the near future, some of which are already there. Look a little further north, 243, and then inside of that, an additional 84 new homes. Closer to Lake Elmo, 266, 161, 104. You get the point when you look at this to say it's quite clear when you look at the data in terms of where the students are now and where they're going to be in the near term, that we're going to have to do something if we want to have an attractive offering for those new families that are coming to our district. In addition to looking at the demographic data, we also took a look at our existing schools. So what you've got here is a table that was put together to try to summarize a variety of different pieces of information. And I found this table to be really helpful. So you've got the names of our different schools, and in 2019, you've got the number of students who are currently enrolled at those schools. Then, looking 4 years into the future, which is basically around the corner, especially when you're talking about needing to build to be able to accommodate this growth, you've got what we anticipate the projected enrollment's going to be. And then you've got the planning capacity. So this is the number that we received from the district in terms of how many students we're planning to have at that individual facility. So when you look at the current enrollment and compare it to the planning capacity, there's a couple things that really stick out. So we put some red boxes around it to try to draw some attention. Why don't we start with Lake Elmo Elementary? So current enrollment is 697. 2 of those are my kids. And that matches up against the planning capacity of 660. And I can attest to you it's already pretty crowded at Lake Elmo, as these numbers would tell you. But look what happens in 4 years. Projected enrollment is 900 kids. So we've got an overcrowded school, and you're going to be adding a significant number of additional kids if we don't do something. Similar dynamic happening with Brookview, right? We have 480 students there currently against a planning capacity of 450. We're already over. And look what happens again in 4 years. We go to 630 students against an existing capacity of 450. Here's something that really struck me. If you add those 2 together, look at Lake Elmo plus Brookview in 4 years, that's on more than 400 additional students. When you look at the average size of our elementary schools, that's a new elementary school. If you turn to Oakland Middle School, you see the same dynamic happening. Current enrollment 973 against a planning capacity of 990. That's a great example of at least our current enrollment is not already over our planning capacity, but look what happens in just 4 years. That jumps up to 1,125 students, and that makes sense because the lower portion of the district is feeding into Oakland. If we don't do something about this situation, we are not going to have capacity in the very near term. And the data that was given to us from what the school board had commissioned is what drives all of this. So one last chart that I wanted to put in front of you. As Ted had highlighted, one of the keys across the community design team, one of our highest hopes, and I think one of the highest hopes and aims for the school board, is to drive equity across our district. This chart is sort of hard to understand the specifics of it. If you dig into it, it's great. There's a lot there. But you know what? You don't have to get too close to it to really understand the message that it's trying to tell you. So what this is a list of our facilities across the top, and then a ranking for a number of different factors. So for example, the very first one there is basic learning space. And so we assessed all of our facilities and we said, how does it score for basic learning space? And it gets a poor score, a moderate score, or a very positive score. And that would be red, yellow, and green. And then you line all of this up. One of the things that you can see is we have significant diversity of the scores across our district. A kid who's attending Stillwater schools in one part of the district is having a very different experience than an identical kid who just happens to live in a different part of the district. And I don't think that's consistent with the idea of driving equity across the entire district. There's another thing that really stands out to me, and the list of the facilities is in alphabetical order across the top, running from left to right. When you do that, Brookview lines up next to Lake Elmo. So these are the scores for Brookview Elementary School, basically green across the board, which you would expect. It's a fantastic facility. It was just recently built. Put it next to Lake Elmo, and unfortunately Lake Elmo is basically red across the board. One of the things that really struck me is I toured all of the facilities, which was a great opportunity. I hadn't been to many of the schools. When we did that, we went to Brookview, and I think it was 7:30 or 8, and then we all got into our cars and we drove to Lake Elmo. Pretty stark difference. Pretty intense inequity when you think about what the experience is for kids who are at Lake Elmo versus kids that are at Brookview. We also wanted to highlight something with regard to the transitions program. It was a new program I wasn't familiar with. As I've come to understand more about it, it's for our young adult learners who are 18 to 21 with special needs who are transitioning out of the educational space and into their life. And so that program is currently rated pretty red across the board and really could benefit from some investment in a similar way to many of the elementary schools. So with that, I wanted to turn it over, but hopefully that the takeaway is clear that there's a lot of growth happening and it's concentrated in the lower half of the district.
Good evening. I'm Michael Call, teacher at Stillwater Area High School, proud parent of a Stillwater graduate. And Anita and I are here tonight because we are going to present the recommendations for action to you as a board. And so, first slide, please. Let's see. After we took in all of the data, after we had discussions, visited sites, looked at all the recommendations for each facility, the next step we took was a priority setting exercise, where at tables we were charged with assigning numerical values to what are our most immediate needs, what are our most important priorities. That's not to mean that anything considered in there was not important, was not valuable, was not meaningful to students and parents in our district, but we were charged with setting priorities. And so this bar graph will show you the most immediate needs and the highest priorities that were reached by the community design team. There was near unanimous consensus from the community design team that we need to address Lake Elmo, Brookview, Oak Park, and Stonebridge Elementary. The other priorities, which Anita's going to talk about a little later, had designed as lower or middle priorities, but they still are very important to our school district. And so our first recommendation that got nearly unanimous consensus from the community design team was to replace Lake Elmo School. It was to replace Lake Elmo School on its current existing site by building a new school to the north of the current building. It may be necessary to purchase some additional land to the north of it to assist in construction, because the recommendation from the community design team is to use the current building while construction of the new elementary school is occurring. That school would open with an enrollment capacity of about 450 students and would be designed so that it could be expandable to 650 students. That would be similar to the current model used at Brookview. A second school would be built on a site where students are most densely populated, a community school that also would be 450 students enrollment capacity with the ability to expand to 650. This is our highest priority. Strongly recommend that it's done as soon as possible. And if you're wondering, why not just build a 900 student mega school? You heard Dan say that enrollment capacity could reach 900 within a few years. That was thoroughly discussed, and that idea was rejected for a couple of reasons. First of all, if you build a 900 student mega school, what happens when enrollment's now 1,200? Where do we stop? Have we lost the idea of a neighborhood community school? If you look at across our district, the average size of our schools is around 500 students. And keeping them within the neighborhood and keeping them smaller and personal was something that the community design team strongly considered. The next recommendation from the community design team that was near unanimous consensus was to expand Brookview Elementary as soon as possible. Expand it by 8 classrooms, expand it to help relieve some of the pressure we're seeing on the growing enrollment in Lake Elmo and in that particular boundary. And why expand Brookview? Because it is our newest and most modern facility. It is most easily remodeled to accommodate students as quickly as possible. And so that's where our investment should be as soon as we can. Another nearly unanimous consensus from the community design team was to open Oak Park School as a school. It was to open Oak Park School as a school to serve our transition students who are ARC students. It was to open Oak Park building as a school for our ALC students who are our students. So quick shout out to the ALC students who are graduating tomorrow. They're right down the hall from me, okay? I see them all the time. And I can tell you my experience with them is they don't want to be at the high school. They want a facility that meets their unique and special needs. And why is Oak Park the right place for that? Because that building has a unique design. That building has separate wings so that you can separate the two programs but yet have interaction there. And so that building lends itself to be created for specialized programs. It has a central location. It would allow the transition students to interact with the community as well. The other recommendation is that we relocate the central services building to Oak Park building. I was hired in this district in 1986. Marv Swanson asked me to meet him at the Central Services Building. I thought it was a warehouse. 34 years later, nothing has changed. Our parents, our students' families have competition. They come here, and that's their first point of contact with Stillwater area schools. They need to go somewhere where a warm, inviting, and welcoming place that they can enroll their students and see what our school district is all about. The reason that the central service building should be relocated to Oak Park as well is that it allows a mutual beneficial relationship with those transition students and the people who work in those district offices. Our transition students have a store. They are learning life skills. This is an opportunity for them to interact with adults in their life. So you might ask me, well, why not reopen Oak Park building as an elementary? That question has been raised. And the obvious answer, first of all, is location. It is not located in a place where our students are. It has a low capture rate. And so it is located in a place which would be good for a multi-purpose facility. In addition to that, if you think about the Oak Park building and where it's at, it's part of a master plan. In other words, as part of a master plan, if you pick out parts of it, it's no longer integrated. The money that you would put into Oak Park building to take an old, outdated elementary school and try to build a modern 21st century learning environment is not a fiscally responsible use of money. The remodeling that could occur here to make this a multi-purpose building is much more fiscally sound. Instead, take money and put that into Stonebridge Elementary. Stonebridge Elementary is unique in that its open classroom design would allow itself to be remodeled at a very fiscally responsible cost and make it a modern 21st century school, one that would be attractive to our parents, perhaps even open enrollment, provide them with a choice within our district. And this is a better use of district resources. It is also one of our highest priorities that you invest in Stonebridge Elementary to have special education upgrades, the media center, and to remodel the open classroom area. And I'm going to turn it over to Anita.
Good evening. I'm Anita Foytek-Craigs. I'm the parent of a former student, and I'm on the CDT as a community member from the city of Lakeland. We have a great team here. We're working together. Oakland Middle School. So the plan with Oakland Middle School, as we see, needs to accommodate more students down the road. And the additional space would include a new gym, which that gym is very small. Having a student who tried to play volleyball there was no place for parents to watch, as well as a new music room. That opens up the current wing that has the music classrooms for the flex media space. It is additional classroom space that could be used for more educational areas. Also including in this plan are daylight upgrades. And a lot of our buildings, we've included the daylight upgrades where there's interior classrooms that don't have any windows. So this would include putting skylights in that brings natural light into the buildings. When we're looking at health and wellness and mental health, having that additional sunlight is one key factor. Yeah. So it will help create healthier learning environments. Lily Lake Elementary, and all of our elementaries, as well as Oakland, now we've dropped to a medium priority. And what I want to say about this is it's medium priority, but that doesn't mean it's not important. If your child is at Lily Lake or at Oakland, this is the most important plan and need for you in your building or for your child's experience. I'd like to say that the high priorities are more urgent, but these are just as important. And in Lily Lake, the upgrades include a bathroom remodel. As I understand that the bathrooms are in bad shape and difficult to use. I know when my daughter was in first grade in Afton Lakeland, there was a bathroom issue, and she, oh, thank God she can't hear this. She refused to go to the bathroom all day long because she couldn't operate the bathroom. So that would be urgent, that would get fixed. And those are the kinds of things in Lily Lake that are in bad shape. Also, addition spaces added for new music and a new art space. music space and as well as just a new flex addition. All of the buildings, we're looking at adding some kind of flex educational space. The 21st century learning models have more open space, not the four walls as much, but having space where kids can go to in a little more open capacity and move about their educational activities in a different way. Also in this plan is the upgrades for the special ed cluster. I believe that's for the autism students, which needs to be constantly worked on so it meets those particular needs for that population. It also includes remodeling some of the classroom space where on this map chart it says open classroom. The rooms there need to be remodeled and brought up. Our older buildings, Lily Lake and Anderson and Afton Lakeland, can, with their lesser amount of kids, can be left to the bottom of the heap and not paid attention to. And that can certainly hurt down the road when we then end up with a Lake Elmo, where the needs are out of control. Stillwater High School, the plan here includes a 1,000-seat auditorium. That would provide enough space for all the parents to be at concerts and art productions at the same time. Also, there's no place in this building where one entire grade level can gather at a time. So this would leave one whole class to be able to be in one building at the same time. Another big need in the high school is the administration entry space. It is very small. It's a bottleneck, especially all day long, with everybody needing to come through that one little tiny office. By contrast, Oakland building, which was remodeled recently, has a pretty large office and it can accommodate and traffic people through a whole lot easier, and yet it's about 1/3 of the students as the high school. So that would be an important thing to add to that building for our security. As well as with security, we're talking about having partitions that could virtually close off part of the building and lock off parts of the building if needed. Next are we have here a Southern Early Childhood Family Center. So later on, we'll have a slide that shows the ECFE building as it is currently, which is a marvelous building, but it's full. And they have needs in the morning, especially, where there's not enough space. And there is more need in the south. People from the south don't have that same access as people from the north with our current ECFE. So our suggestion in this plan is that we build a southern ECFE building. Location to be determined. This map has it on the Oakland site or a new site, but with the idea that it can help accommodate all those burgeoning neighborhoods across Lake Elmo and Woodbury, as well as Afton Lakeland, West Lakeland. Afton Lakeland Elementary is also one of our older buildings that often doesn't get a whole lot of attention. Here, as well as in the other buildings, we're looking at doing things for the media. All of our buildings asked for attention to our media centers. You know, when I went to school a long time ago, we actually had Encyclopedia Britannica to look up information, and we don't do that anymore. Those books aren't in our media centers. It's a whole different way. Media centers are used in a different way, but not all of our schools have changed the physical formatting of our media centers. So that's on all the buildings to upgrade those media centers. Also in this plan, it is looking at the gym space. The gym space in Afton Lakeland is terribly small. When I started in school with my daughter there at 2003, the principal at that time had talked about adding a new gym that would be a community center. So kind of with that in mind, the idea of a new gym that could work on including space for the community to have access, if you will. Call it a mini PAC, call it a mini community center, but it could provide access in the southern half of the district. And our Lower St. Croix Valley Foundation is excited to partner with the school district on a project such as this. Anderson Elementary, again, their biggest need is, again, in that media center. When we did the tours, they have many little closets and office off of the media center, and those little closets have become offices and educational space. It has become space for the integration and helpers. There was one little office, it was a closet, that is now an office and is used for the district, for the school's instrumental band for their music. They need that remodeled, so they have more space. Part of the plan is to manage this as a 2-section school. Right now it's closer to 2.5, but we would look at it to be a 2-section school. And tag teaming, Mike is back up.
All right, I'm back. Stillwater Middle, or as I think of it, the old high school where I first was at, and they have a unique problem there. They have lots of space. It's just not very functional space. They have a computer area that's kind of wide open, that they're not really sure the best way to use that. They need some remodeling of their flex and media space. They have places where walls were added, but not completely added, so they have sound issues between classrooms. And so even though it says low priority there, it is a fairly urgent need that they are able to make their space much more usable and much more functional for the students there. Rutherford Elementary. Rutherford Elementary is a wonderful school. It's where my daughter went to school. Thank you, Stephen Gordy. And when we toured there, their most pressing need was an upgrade to the media center. It's one of our newer buildings. It serves our students very well, but that's an area where they said that they could use some help and support.
And as I had mentioned earlier with early childhood, so in the early childhood family center, there's no change. The biggest change to help them with their crowding is to build a center in the south. And finally, our last slide addresses our current properties now of Withrow, and the community design team recommends that we sell that property as it is. It is a building that is outdated, and we do have a cost of $40,000 to $75,000 a year to operate it. I understand the ranges because of winter, and we don't know how much snow we get and how cold it is. And then central services, we recommend that we sell that building, move administration to Oak Park, and use those proceeds as part of the renovation.
So in conclusion, we hope you heard this. We hope you heard that this was a professionally led, fair, and inclusive process. We hope you heard that it was thorough and data-driven. And we hope that you have now a prioritized list of recommendations that you can go forward with. And I would say we hope, beyond hope, that this plan is a unifying force to move our community forward. We do have some thank yous. We want to thank the Cunningham Group. And having been a part of sessions like this in the past in healthcare, it is no easy task to heard anywhere from 35 to 65 people over 4 hours, multiple sessions, time and time again, and get a productive outcome. And they did that. They did it with professionalism, they did it with skill, and they did it with good humor. And so we want to thank them for that. We want to thank the community design team. It's a lot of people that put in a lot of time. And there were, tough conversations at our tables, and that's the right thing. That's what we should be having. But again, we found consensus. And I think if you talk to the Cunningham group who've done this in other places around the country, they saw remarkable consensus that they don't always see. Finally, we want to thank the school board for chartering this effort. And again, we hope that it's given you a roadmap to the future. And lastly, I guess, I'd like to thank the people that put in the extra time to present. Thank you, fellow presenters as well. So thank you very much.
Well, I would just like to say, wow, thank you very much to the presenters. You all did a fantastic job, and I would like to concur. Thank you very much, Cunningham, for all the work that you helped us go through in this journey. We really appreciate the time and the outcome and your heartfelt sentiments towards the future of our district. So thank you very much. At this point, do any board members have any questions, follow-up questions that they would like to ask? Director Weisberg?
Thank you, sorry. I heard a couple of people talk about 21st century learning spaces, and that specifically someone said it doesn't make sense to invest any more money in Oak Park. There would be so much needed to be invested to make it a 21st century learning space. How many of our elementary buildings right now are considered 21st century learning spaces?
Not enough. Do you want to join?
Right.
Yeah, I think the tours of all the facilities have given a certain framework for the discussions. Many of the recommendations that you heard presented are enhancing the elementary schools to bring 21st century qualities to them.
So would it just be Brookview at this point? Or would Brookview and Rutherford be considered our only buildings?
I would say Brookview and Rutherford are two excellent examples.
Mm-hmm. But beyond that, we don't have any other ones.
I'm going to also invite this group too, but those are the two that have it, that you have, that are well situated.
Mm-hmm. I would say Stonebridge meets a lot of those categories. It needs, for a small amount of money, to modify it, it brings it right up to that excellent, excellent standard of what we would be looking at.
It has great potential.
And then, I mean, I have so many questions. Were we going to be able to have like a working session to go over? There's so many questions that I don't think we have time to address everything tonight.
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the entire packet, as any of you have taken the time to look, is quite large, and we appreciate the amount of detail, and I appreciate all the beautiful colors and the great pictures, and it is really a lot to go through, and so I think we will, as a board, be taking some time to consider all of those details in great length and bringing it forward at sometime in the future, yes. Mm-hmm.
But I would say maybe not necessarily with Cunningham, so I would say any questions of them probably tonight.
Okay. So this will probably be your last chance to speak with Cunningham if you have something specific to to their leadership.
Go ahead, I'll wait.
Yep.
Me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I have actually a couple of questions, and they all kind of fit together, so if you'll let me proceed with that. At first, I would like to ask Shelley about the community resource team, if you could explain that a little bit. I've heard a little bit about that, which I'm not well advised in.
The resource guides, is that what you mean?
Yes.
So that was made up of, I would say Superintendent Pontrelli, Director Hoheisel, Carissa, Dr. McDowell. I think those were the main people in the room, and then I was in there, and Cunningham. And so what that was meant to be was, here's the agenda for the next meeting. Is there anything in here that we need to be concerned about, or anything we need to tweak how we present or what we talk about? And there were times when I would be able to say, I think if you talk about this, you're going to want to consider laying it out this way, or this might be an issue, or It was also during that we had gotten some feedback that people were frustrated about not enough time to look at, developing the plan, and so they changed course a little bit and gave people more opportunity to talk about that. So that's really, that team was not meant to be any type of decision-making team. It was laid out just to help facilitate kind of how the meetings were laid out.
Okay, can I continue with this couple?
Sure.
Here? Okay, early on in, let's say in the summer, early on in the process, the two of you met with each board member individually to kind of get a little bit of insight as to where we thought the community was at and what, we thought would be received well by the community or the needs of the district. Whatever happened to that information? Because I haven't seen it presented.
We listened, we recorded that information, but we didn't feel that that was public information that you wanted to share at large with the community design team, other than the fact that a number of you participated in the community design team meetings.
So I wonder, I could be totally off base, but maybe the question is, how was that reflected in the work that you did? And maybe is that?
Yeah, I never saw any of the suggestions that were made come through, and so I was curious as to what you did with that information.
I think that all of that information was part of the background history that we use to help us and inform us as we move through the process. I don't know, John, if there's anything else that you want to add, but it was kind of our first foray into the getting to know everybody and understanding what your issues were so that we were more informed entering the master plan process.
Okay, and then how did you decide what to offer CDT members?
I'm not, can you repeat that question?
The list of things that, directions you wanted to go, how did you decide what options to give the community members to move forward? Because I know some of them were stopped in process and weren't discussed.
Yeah, I can answer that. We had 2 full workshops where we asked the community design team to create recommendations for how the district would look in 10 years' time. And so our recommendation was based on the common ground from what those teams recommended. So our recommendation, as we told the groups, was what was clear to us that was common from the teams that were working on those solutions. That's how we do our work. We ask the teams to develop solutions, and then we understand and analyze that. To us, it was surprising how much common ground there was, and how much agreement. So then our process then simply offers that back, asks people to reflect on that, and move forward from there. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Director Weisberg?
And from what I understand, there was not a lot, one of the slides in the packet that we got showed when Oak Park came up, it said we had to postpone this to another time. And then another slide said, hold on one second. In light of the 219 board meeting, based on a discussion with Resource Guides, Cunningham Group prepared an option of reopening Oak Park as an elementary. Per the CDT, this was postponed to after the priority setting exercise. And my understanding was that the last meeting when it was supposed to be discussed, it was fairly contentious and people refused to talk about it. So I'm concerned that it didn't get enough attention as a realistic option. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all.
And I don't know if anybody else wants to piggyback onto that one. Yeah.
Sure. So again, my name's Dan O'Connor, and I was at the meeting, and I probably was one of the more vocal voices. I can tell you, maybe just take a step back to the first question.
Mm-hmm.
My experience going through the process was that the Cunningham Group was bringing together this design team and then asked us as a group to come up with our recommendations of what we thought the future of our district should look like.
Right.
they didn't seed that with suggestions of what it should be or what we should consider. It was more of an open process to say, let's have this group try to design it, which is how I think it ought to have gone. So I didn't know that there were other input that was provided, but I'm actually glad that it was not injected into the process, because I think it would have influenced the direction that we went. With regard to your specific question on the Oak Park building, I believe that was the 6th meeting, the 6th workshop where that had come up. And it was presented at the beginning of the meeting, and it was a bit disorienting, to be honest, because it felt like it was a bit of, I didn't know where it was coming from, where the request was coming from. And the way I perceived it was, well, we really want to have a recommended path forward that would relate to opening Oak Park School as an elementary. Mm-hmm. And so what would this design team do if you were forced to do that? And my view, and I think it was shared by many of the members of the community design team, is that that should not be done. That for all the reasons we've talked about, primarily the data in terms of where people are, the Oak Park building has fantastic potential as a school, but it's in the wrong place to be an elementary school. And so for me, when I looked around the room in terms of the investment of the community, it seemed like a poor use of our time to build out a plan that would facilitate opening Oak Park as an elementary school. And frankly, I didn't understand why we were being asked to do it, and I feared that were a plan to come out that said, well, if we had to open it as an elementary, this is how we would do it, would be misunderstood as some type of recommendation that it should be done. I think that the consensus from the group is that that should not occur, and therefore the sentiment of the room as I understood it was that that would not be a good use of our time, and so we continued on with the rest of the work that we had to have for the rest of that meeting.
Thank you. And what I understood was that when it was supposed to come up and actually was suggested in a resource guide meeting, and there was some contentious discussion during that even, so before it even got to you, it was already contentious. But the sheet that somebody from the committee gave me shows as an elementary, it would cost $5.29 million. As an administrative remodel, it would be $6.79 million. We've also received information from the district when we talked about Oak Park before that it would be $3.8 million to make it an elementary school. And it is a centrally located school, so I know that frankly, that's a reason a lot of the people resigned from the team. So I just would like to say I'm disappointed that I don't think it got the discussion that I feel that it needed to get.
Sure.
And my other question was, is it normal that many people resign from a facility planning team in your experience?
So just one last comment, and then I'll
Sure,
get out
go
of the way. With regard to the relative costs, I guess comparing the numbers to me, certainly relevant, but it's a secondary consideration to, is the physical building in the right place for where the students are? And even if it was less expensive, the fundamental fact is it's not near where the growth is in our district. And so perhaps it would cost less than some of the alternatives, but you'd be spending money on a much lower return investment from my perspective, which is why I don't think it was a good use of the community design team's time to spend working on that. And I think that that fits into the overall master plan. And as we talked about earlier, the plan fits together, and if you open Oak Park as an elementary school, you will break many of the interconnections between the other recommendations. So, and finally, with regard to resignations, if people were concerned, I wish that they would have voiced that, and I wish that they would have stayed. Resigning from the group robs us of the opportunity to hear that perspective, and then we were left with the group that was willing to work to move forward. I don't have any perspective as to how common that is, but if people objected to it, I think it would have been great to continue with the process so that the rest of us could have heard it and then potentially built that into the recommendations we brought forward.
And I can't speak for those people. I know that we've just gotten emails that they feel they were kind of shut out when they tried to make their opinions known. So, I mean, I can't speak for them. I can only tell you what we were told, and that was one of my questions to Cunningham was, has this number of people ever resigned from a planning committee that you've been a part of?
Actually, there is always attrition through a long process that is this long and requires 4 hours of attendance. That's fairly common. We did not notice, we weren't aware of people resigning. That it's not really, we don't keep track of who's coming. The sessions always had great attendance. We were always overjoyed with, every session had 7 or 8 tables full of 6 people working hard. So we don't really track statistics like that. But we felt the participation was great in the whole process.
Director Pearson?
Just to follow up to that, I know that because we talked about this at the last resource guides meeting, how to address listing names of those who didn't want to be part. And I think at that time your sentiment was this isn't something we run up against a lot, knowing how to deal with the removal of names. So I think it's not super common. I think it was unfortunate and somewhere where we didn't want to land, but I think not.
I think, 4 people did not want to be listed as participating? We've never had that experience. It's kind of an odd thing, but.
I would just add, we always try to recognize those individuals that have participated in at least one of the workshops because they did put in time and effort and energy, and we always like to be as inclusive as possible.
Can I just add something?
Yeah.
Sure. The only thing I'd add to the process, that comment about being shut out really feels unfair to me to the process. They were so deliberate about most of our time, particularly the last 3 or 4 sessions, was in small groups, 3, 4, 5 people in groups. Everybody had a say in those groups. Everybody had a say. No one was shut out. And so I guess I really struggle with that because I don't think that's fair to the process that was used, both to make sure, because it's hard to speak in front of 40 people. It's not hard to speak in front of 3 to 5.
Director Riley?
So if we go back to the Oak Park conversation, and I was there that night, and I took notes of what happened that night. And in my notes right there, I have written hostile room. So if you have a room that is that hostile, I don't know how anybody who is maybe of a different opinion is at liberty to speak freely. When John had asked for options of what ALC or transitions would do if they opened, because that was what was requested at the meeting with the resource guides, immediately it was shut down, and he agreed with a CDT member and said it was a waste of their time to even look at Oak Park. So to me, it didn't feel that everybody was heard and that a discussion even occurred or it was entertained, any other options other than we had to end this, this was done, and we couldn't explore anything beyond that anybody else would have come up with.
And I understand that, maybe you didn't feel like people were shut out, but we've gotten multiple emails of people that did feel shut out. So it was not they didn't feel it was a consensus.
Anybody else have anything? Okay.
I'd just like to respond to that. I was there and present. I teach school every day, often in a hostile room. And I didn't in any way perceive that. People had ample opportunity to speak up, to share, to talk with others. As Dan previously said, that proposal was brought forward. There was discussion that happened. And it was decided that we had already explored that, we had already looked at that recommendation, and decided that as the consensus of the group, we were not going to go forward recommending Oak Park Elementary be opened again as an elementary. As I stood up here earlier and stated, that is an old building. It's not a modern building. The investment you put into that building, either temporarily, is not worth this long-term use of that building. Those resources are better used somewhere else. This group looked at that, discussed that thoroughly. Dissenting opinions were heard. And when I started this process, I had no preconceived ideas about where it was going to go. In fact, if I took the Leatherman survey, I probably would have agreed with most of those findings saying we shouldn't build new schools. But by being part of this process, the education and information I received, I would respond to that survey much differently today. And it would be my hope that the board would examine these proposals and these recommendations and educate our public about what our needs are and how to go forward, because this is a master plan looking into the 10 to 15-year future of our district. So I did not perceive in any way an environment to be hostile. It was a welcoming environment that allowed me and others to discuss things openly.
Okay, I really appreciate that. And I just want to say, clearly this was a good process. We went through a lot of conversation, a lot of voices were heard. But clearly the thing I see is that every individual person, whether you were part of the community design team or whether you're just an outsider hearing about it, everyone has their own perspective. Everyone has their own sense of what's real and what they value and what they think is important. And the proposal you just put in front of us is the consensus of the group. And I respect that. And I think it's a phenomenal product. The outcome is beautiful, and we have a lot of information to consider. I think the thing about where we're at right now, I want to make sure that every single voice that was a part of this does feel honored. And whether you think it was a great process or whether you think it was a terrible process, that's yours to own. That's just fine. It's all okay. But what we're at right now is, as a board, now we have what you're giving us. And we have to decide what is it going to be that we go out to the public and ask to support with their votes. At some point, we're going to be asking the community to support this product. And there is a lot more that we need to consider as a board before we get that ready. It may not look exactly like what's here, because if we as a board have information that suggests that this community at large will not support it, then we will not probably want to put that in front of the community. We want something that's going to succeed, that everyone can get behind. And so I want to take this moment to say I really value the experience that we've been through, but we're not finished yet. We have more work to do. We want to engage with the community. I think we have more survey work that we need to have done. And we need to take very, very good care that everyone feels honored and respected in their voice, and that we will try to come up with something that truly does actually unite our community. That's what I think we need to do.
One quick.
I think Shelley had something.
Yep. Thank you. And I appreciate all the presenters and Cunningham and truly the time that you put in. I think for me, I think Ava, you shared that the highest hope was that there would be a unifying vision. And that was my highest hope going in, that this would be something that could unite us as a community and help us be able to come together and move forward. I don't think we're there yet. I think we have some work to do before it truly is something that, at the end of the day, we have to pass it at the polls, right? So it has to be something that the entire community can get behind. So I think that's maybe where some of the frustration came from, is that we did have some people who felt like their hopes and dreams weren't reflected in any part of the process, and so, or in any part of the final recommendation maybe. And so we're going to have to do some work to get to a place where we can bring as much of it together as possible. I think the board will support most of what's in the plan in some way at some time with the price tag that we think the community will pass. But I think there were some things that didn't work out as well as we would have hoped, and I want to honor just everybody who put in all of the time and hours, and I appreciate all that was done. I agree with Chair Stivlin that there's more to be done so that we can get to a place where we can pass whatever the plan is.
That's really quick. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Director Weisberg?
One of the reasons that I voted for Cunningham to facilitate this group was one of the things that you said when you worked with a school district before was there was a hopes and dreams package, which was everything, and then there were chunks of it. So would you consider the first chunk the high priority issues, as far as that's your main recommendation, and then everything else can sort of fall in line based on interest and money?
The reason we asked the community design team to prioritize is to give you the tools that you need in order to be able to figure out how to phase implementation of the master plan.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you saw top priority, second priority, and lower priority items.
And we understand there will be a survey about, you need to understand what your community will support in terms of the dollar value. So we would ask you to use the prioritized list as these are the most important things, and then, where that cuts off is where that phase one would be. And the community design team didn't feel like it had the knowledge or purview to make the decision about what phase is. We know that you will be making that decision and that you will be needing more information to do that.
Thank you. And I was just going to say thank you to all the people that donated their time. I was on the last long-range facility planning committee. I know it's a lot of time, and it's always at night when you'd rather be relaxing in your house. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, anybody else? Jen?
Yeah, I don't know who to ask what variety of questions to, but I guess I kind of had a question I wanted to follow up with the board of, I don't know who asked it, but I feel like I heard it in a variety of different capacities over the past half an hour, but we didn't get all that there were some things in it that we didn't get, or it wasn't complete. So I guess I'm wondering what in specific we feel is lacking based on the comments I heard. That's one question I have, and I guess, so that's for the board, for you, for Cunningham. I was part of the bond group as well, and a kind of a criticism, and I discussed this with you, talk about what did we talk about in those independent meetings. This was what I discussed. One thing that bothered me was I felt that it was, here's your silo, stay in your little lane, and that bothered me because I did want to have more of a comprehensive stake in the entirety of the process. So to me, there's a difference between not getting my way and not being heard. And I sincerely think those are two different things. I didn't get my way with some of the things in the previous bond. I was livid about the auditorium. I was livid about Lake Elmo. Lake Elmo has been the weak stepsister for way too many years, and I'm frankly tired of it. And but I feel that it's important that people are heard, and I really believe there is a difference between not getting what you want and not being heard. So I ask you, what was your process for hearing people, dissenting voices and whatnot? I don't know who to ask that to, but.
Can you take a shot at that, and maybe we can.
Yeah, go ahead.
Come on.
Well, I just, having been through these processes before, I couldn't imagine a process where there was more opportunity to share your thoughts. Every single session, several hours of time in small groups, and then the group would come to consensus, and then the group would stand up and present. They would present what they came up with as a group. So there was just a very inclusive process. I don't know what you do, and I think you make a good point. If someone didn't feel like they got their way and chose not to continue, I don't know what you do with that. I think that's a challenge. In the hospital, they all work for us. They have to come back to the next meeting. They have to, right? Well, the community doesn't. And so, I just am so, I feel so strongly that it wasn't because the process was unfair or the process did not allow people to speak up. There's just no question in my mind, and I've seen this done a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, I think does anybody have any final questions or comments? All right, I think it's time to wrap this up. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for the presentation. We appreciate all the time and your partnership. Thank you. Thank you. Next item on our agenda is we have 5 policies that we're going to present for first reading, and I think for this I'm going to turn it over to our policy working group chair, Mark Burns.
Thank you.
I don't know if we want to give just a minute for people to, unless they're very excited about the policies.
I can't believe they would leave.
Maybe if you sang it.
How about after this? And just as a note, I think after we go through this policy reading, maybe we'll take a 5-minute break so we can stretch our legs.
Awesome.
So we have 5 policies that are here for our first reading. And these are policies that were relatively recently put in place. They were adopted in November 2017. These are what we call the MSBA model policies that we are trying to adopt across our entirety of our policies. These were kind of the first batch that were put in place in 2017. But we do have a requirement that we have a review every 2 years of these policies. And maybe we'll just identify them as a group. It's our first reading of it, and so if anybody has any comments, if the community has comments, we'd ask that you bring them to our attention. I know that myself and Chair Stivlin and Director Pearson are on the policy committee. Working group, we'd ask that you forward any comments about these to us. So the first one is Policy 101, the legal status of the school district. The second one, Policy 101.1, name of the school district. Third is Policy 102, equal educational opportunity. Policy 103 is complaints, students, employees, parents, and other people. And Policy 104 is the school district mission statement. This is our first reading, and so I don't know, I guess I'll open it up for, with a group of those 5 policies, if anybody on the board has any comments.
Dr. Pearson?
I apologize, you probably said this, but I was distracted when everybody left. But these are just normal, well, that are biannual review.
That's correct, yeah. So they were adopted in November 2017. And actually, they were new policies at the time for the district. Yeah, but they have been set for a 2-year review cycle. And so we're on that cycle this time.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so this is the first reading. If anybody has any comments or questions about any of these, this would be the time to share them. It'll come back at our next meeting for a second reading, and then we'll have an action item.
That's right.
Right. Anybody have any comments or questions at this time? Nope. All right. We'll take a 5-minute break.
stuff, and I think, oh, it's going to be great.
All right.
I had one on John goes, just the hookup. Like straight up.
At this time, we're going to reconvene the meeting. If you have a seat and settle in. The next item we have on our agenda tonight is action item A. It is the 2021 to 2024 Achievement and Integration Plan. And I will ask Superintendent Pontrelli to present that for us.
Sure. We don't have a presentation this evening. We've had work sessions and presentations to the board, and there's been a lot of discussion. Board members have come in and had conversations, and we've had a number of questions, good, thoughtful discussions about the Achievement and Integration Plan. And so this plan, just as a reminder, the community is due every 3 years to the Department of Education. We have the ability to adjust the budget on a yearly basis. And so just for background for everyone, following the January 23rd learning session and the February 6th first reading, Stillwater Area Public Schools is asking the Board of Education to approve our proposed 3-year Achievement and Integration Plan, July 1st to 2020 to June 30th, 2023, prior to submission to the Minnesota Department of Education for their approval. A motion and a second to approve the Achievement and Integration Plan is requested by administration.
Thank you. Could I have a motion to approve the Achievement and Integration Plan?
So moved.
Director Burns, do I have a second? Director Pelletier? All right, let's have some discussion. Director Weisberg.
Thank you. I apologize I wasn't at the last meeting when the presentation happened, but I thought that there were some really good questions that board members asked in the packet, and I was sort of hopeful that there would be maybe some changes in the plan prior to tonight. Monday, December 9th, we got an email from Assistant Superintendent McDowell sending us a presentation with the world's best workforce as it applied to achievement and integration, and then asking, it said any input you could provide would be greatly appreciated, attached to the plan, as well as the world's best workforce presentation that includes results of our current plan. My questions specifically asked 3 of the 5 world's best workforce goals that related to the plan were not completely achieved. And so I was hoping that something else would be added to the plan. I'm sorry?
No, you're fine.
Oh, sorry. That addressed that. The first one says, all children ready for school at the start of the 2018-19 school year. The goal was 80% of kindergarten students who have attended Stillwater Preschool will demonstrate readiness as measured by a benchmark score of 34 on the FastBridge early composite reading. And the result was only 70% reached that benchmark. The next one was all 3rd graders can read at grade level. The goal was by June of 2019, 3rd graders meeting end of year proficiency as measured by MCA will increase from 63.4 to 65. The result was 58.7% met it. The next one was racial and economic achievement gaps are closed. The goal was 74% of all students demonstrate medium or high growth as measured by MCA reading and math. 75% students demonstrated medium to high growth in reading, but only 70 in math. So my question was, could there be something else in the plan that addressed the fact that those goals weren't achieved? I didn't feel that was answered, and the first word in the plan is achievement, and while I like a lot of this plan, I don't think enough is in the plan that goes toward achievement. So.
Thank you.
Well, could I just ask a question? Could I have some examples of some things that could be in the plan?
Well, that's what I was kind of hoping would happen. I mean, I know that Director Riley met with the team and suggested some of the same things I did, and so I was hopeful that after that and after everyone's questions, something else would happen. For one thing, the last plan had a preschool aspect. Hold on one second. I'll find it. There was a preschool readiness that is not in our current plan now. So 63% of the funds are for grades 8 to 12, with very little going toward the other grades. So that was one thing that dropped off from the last integration plan, was the preschool aspect of it. So I would have been happy if that had stayed in too. To me, it seems like we didn't achieve a lot of the goals we tried to, and we have less in the plan that has any bearing on moving the needle than we had last time.
Well, sure. I don't know. I guess in the interest of trying to come to closure on it, did we have the opportunity to speak with staff about that?
I think all those questions went.
Yeah, and
they were answered, or
they were asked.
Asked.
Did any board member? I thought I heard that some board members did meet with our preschool staff to address that. Was that correct?
We met with the preschool staff and answered the questions as part of the 250-page board report.
Okay. So those were questions. Were those
the answers to all those questions are in there? Yeah.
Well, the preschool question was increase the number of pre-K students who are ready for kindergarten as measured by the gold standard. And I read the goal, and we didn't quite make it. And the answer to my question said refer to attachment D. And that's what I was referring to. Attachment D was the world's best workforce. And the slide that we were sent said that it was not met. So I just wondered, and if we didn't meet it, why did that particular goal go away?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I would like to see. Yeah.
So to clarify, there were never funds set aside specifically to meet that goal in the world's best workforce. But because the Achievement Integration Plan is something that coincides with the world's best workforce, that goal was put in there. We are still working toward that goal, but we are not allocating any A&I funds towards that.
Right,
and to clarify, there was funding and is funding that's currently being utilized to support early childhood, and that has been professional development. 100% of the early childhood staff are going through intercultural coaching, professional development, which is a plan that was developed in collaboration with early childhood staff and what they wanted, and so that is continuing to be supported. One thing we shared at the last board meeting and also at the learning session was that everything cannot be put in an A&I plan.
Sure.
When we're looking at the achievement gap, that is a system-wide solution and framework that we address. So A&I is particularly designed to follow statute for achievement and integration. So the two goals that we spend the money for is to increase racial and economic integration and reduce racial and economic achievement disparities. That does not mean we can generalize it to everything that we want to do. And in regard to your question about the questions that you didn't have the answers you wanted to, we didn't imply that a question meant a directive to change the plan. I never understood that a question that was sent to me was also a way to say we want you to change the plan. We answered it the way we answered it to how we operate. I did not realize you wanted the plan changed.
Can I speak?
Yeah, Director Riley.
Thanks for meeting with me last week. I thought we had a really good, it was at least an hour and a half conversation.
Yeah.
And I thought moving forward, there are great things or perceptions that we exchanged that we can learn from each other on. I was hoping that after we had talked, and you kind of asked where I was at on all of it, and I was hoping there would have been an additional component of academic supports show up here today. But I see that there isn't anything here, so I'm unfortunately not going to be able to support this plan because it is a 3-year plan. And for me to vote for it, that means I have to believe in it. And I really, really, really strongly believe there needs to be more stronger academic supports in there. So.
Yeah, I think in some ways, I feel like the process we've gone through this time around is improved from the last time we went around. We have had a lot more information. We've had opportunities to talk with you, to talk with Eric and his team, we've had opportunities to ask lots of questions and have conversation. I think one of the things that is kind of, and I'm trying to sort of get it honed into like, what's the main thing here? And I think one thing that's been a little bit muddled is we don't really have a clear definition of success, because I think a big part of this program is about the relationships. Like you can't really measure some of this. A lot of this you can't measure. It's really about how does it feel to be in our schools? How does it feel to be in our high school? Do we have a welcoming environment? These are all incredible things, and we value them and we want them. And that's not being called into question. I think that's the second part that's a little bit harder, and that is the academic piece. And I think that the concerns that have been raised, at least from my perspective, it's just, the big question is this enough? Are we doing enough? And all of the things that we have going are fantastic, but is it enough? And for me personally, if AVID is a great program, then I really do want to see it school-wide. Well, then we say that, and then we hear, well, that's not the point. It's supposed to be targeted specific to a certain group of kids. Well, okay, that's fine, but, I'm not really sure, and so I think I still do have a lot of questions. I feel really, really good about the program, but I think I agree in some ways we could even be doing more. And I worry sometimes, can we be having an ongoing conversation about what's happening and get feedback like every year? I know you have to submit a budget every year. When we come to that point, can we have a conversation about all the good things because this has been really informative to have this process. But I don't want to wait another 3 years till we get that.
I would love the opportunity to do a monthly achievement and integration update. You build it in, we take 10 or 15 minutes and we kind of tell you what's happening, what's going on. I think that's a tremendous idea.
Well, if you have things you want to share with us on a monthly basis, that would be great. But I guess I was thinking more like annually, just can we get a more comprehensive story? Maybe we set aside a work session and go dig deep, because I think the work session that we had was actually a really great conversation. It was helpful for board members to learn. I think it was helpful for the community to learn more about this programming.
So I'd just like to, one of the things the board can consider is, we don't have to submit this till March 5th. I did ask at our board chair superintendent meeting if there were questions, if we needed more time. And that didn't seem like a consensus of the group at the time. And so, one thing I want to share is when an individual board member comes in for information and conversation and sharing ideas, that's fabulous. We want that. You represent communities and you bring the information forward. But when it comes to the plan, it needs to be a board discussion. Mm-hmm. And so I wouldn't expect directors to change a plan without the whole board having a conversation about what that looked like. So if you need to and would like to, you have 2 more weeks before we need to, or March 15th, this needs to be submitted. So you have at least another board meeting and have time to have more discussion as a board if you would like. You can always have those conversations, like you said, Chair Stivlin, along the way. But if there's a consensus from the board that you haven't had enough time to have your questions answered, typically, we ask to have questions ahead of time so we can be prepared to share that with you. But if you need more time, we certainly have it.
Director Pearson?
Thank you. I think maybe some of the confusion, I don't know, you referenced that Dr. McDowell had asked, what are our concerns? What do we want to see? I think maybe part of it is that it's one thing to ask questions. It's one thing to see, like, what matters to you reflected somehow in conversation or in adjusting the plan somewhat. And I think for me, it's not about, like, I think the plan is great or I don't think the plan is great. I think it's about your job's to convince us. And I think some board members are saying, we did do what we thought we were supposed to do by sharing with Dr. McDowell some of our concerns or things we wanted to be part of the consideration as the plan unfolded. I don't know if those were reflected or not, but I think I don't think anybody has any, like, you're doing a bad job or anything like that. I think it's just.
2 things that I heard in conversation and through questions was a lot of hesitancy and consideration to take AVID out of the program. And professionally, I cannot support that. AVID does show results. It shows a reduction of achievement gap. And so that is something that we can't recommend.
To be clear, that is not what I understood. That is not at all what I have heard at all.
Well, I've heard how could we use it outside of AVID, A&I funds, and so I think I would just like clear conversation about what the expectation is, because my intention was never to not answer a question or hurt someone's feelings over not providing the information.
We're interested in academic rigor for all of our students.
That would be
that's what
AVID.
we're interested in. We want to see high scores, and that's the only way we have to measure it. That's it. Nobody said anything about cutting AVID. In fact, I've heard people say they want to expand it if we can. And I'm hearing mostly maybe we can't. I don't know, okay? Those are further questions. We want to make sure that all of our kids have what they need to be able to be successful academically. That's the question. Is AVID enough? Not should it go away. That's not it. Absolutely not it.
Okay, one thing I think then, just to bring us back, is that the A&I plan are specific funds to target racially and economically diverse underserved populations. So if we're looking to expand something, a lot of your ideas are great, but that doesn't necessarily need to reside in the A&I plan. And that's where the ideas get confused, because we can't address everything through the A&I plan.
Just to follow up on that, I think that before we came here to this meeting, we had another meeting that we were talking about, what are some ways in which we can support achievement. And I think that's all of our goal up here. How do we support achievement? And I think that we had a constructive conversation, and I certainly hope we have more of those conversations. But this achievement and integration plan represents, relatively speaking, a small portion of that, and it's very specifically oriented. Whereas what we're talking about at our previous meeting, at our work session, is how can we expand some of these strategies? How can we learn from what we have in the achievement and integration plan, use some of that, maybe we change it for the broader, our broader budget and education. But I fear that there's a little bit of mixing where this is we have been told, and we have slides, I'm sure we can bring them back up, how the plan is working, how the achievement and integration plan is showing growth in learning. That's a fact, and I think that's something we should be very, very proud of. We have speakers who come up who demonstrate that their own personal convictions of how well it's working, and we see it in the data that it's working. So I think that we have an opportunity to look and strategize and work together to identify resources that we can put towards education that we feel is important. This is one that is targeted and it's working.
Liz. Director Weisberg.
Thank you. We had a speaker earlier tonight who said no plan is ever going to address and that's exactly right. I'm only saying that as part of the plan, that is submitted, I wish hit more of the achievement part. And when we were sent the World's Best Workforce Goals, that was the first thing I looked at, and 3 of the goals weren't met. And so I was hopeful that, for instance, and you were saying your ideas are all great. This was in the plan last time, the specifically related to pre-K. So if we didn't hit that goal, I would hope that it would stay in, and we would have information like, well, this is what we're going to try to do to make the goal this time. And because that went away and 2 other goals weren't met, I was hoping that this would have some more teeth to move the needle a little bit more. I'm not saying I'm against any of the other part of the plan. I just wish it could include more.
Right.
What I'm hearing you saying is maybe some broader conversation around other things we're doing, like in the school improvement plans for early childhood, for elementaries, that address those achievement disparities that aren't specifically called out in the A&I plan. Because sometimes when we take the funds of A&I, even though they are $1 million, you can saturate those easily and not get any results. So that's why we tend to target very specifically to get results, but it doesn't mean we're not incorporating other responses to achieve the goals in the world's best workforce through curriculum, through PD, and through our school improvement plans and MTSS structures. So I think there just may be that misunderstanding of this may be all we're doing for that, and we're doing a lot more, and we could share that with you. We'd be happy to.
That'd be great. Director Riley?
I don't want to say that there's a misunderstanding because I think we understand. I understand completely, and I understand what the funding is and what the funding entails, and I understand how broad it actually is. And you are not honed in on one specific area per se, but you have to show what your intent is and how you're going to achieve that intent of your goal. My concern is this is targeted money, right? This is students that are underserved, that these funds should be able to help improve their are areas of it growing and growth. You know, some of that, if you want to look at the numbers that way, there is some growth in that. Is the achievement gap closing? No, it is not. These kids, they deserve this whether they're in AVID or not. Not all of these kids are in AVID. So I would like to see more emphasis on some academic supports for those students, whether they are in AVID or not, because not all of our underserved are in AVID programming.
Director Pelletier?
Thank you. Well, I guess to that point, then, I feel like we had a rich discussion earlier during our work session that I guess when I think of that comment, I think that, well, we just discussed about our budget and adding assistants in classrooms, and what we had with Rob Bach when he was there. I took that as providing that opportunity for all other students, and I really see this as a completely and utterly different thing altogether. This is an AVID. This is our. I'm just trying to understand. This is our achievement and integration plan, and I am all about 200% promoting the academic achievement of all of our students, and I feel that we discussed that earlier, and I feel like we're meshing two different things.
Director Pearson?
Thank you. Can I just ask a question? Is at least part of the goal of the Achievement Integration Plan to close the achievement gap, or is that not a part of the plan?
Yes, it is in the aspect of reducing racial and economic underperformance of students. But I think one thing that we hear a lot is the achievement gap is solely MCA or standardized tests, that's the only way we can demonstrate that we are reducing the achievement gap. But if you look at holistically, reducing the achievement gap includes opportunities of participation in school to thrive, the whole child development. It includes engagement in the classroom. It includes grades. It includes a variety of things. But when we think about the achievement gap solely as a standardized test score, that really creates a singular focus on what we want our students to become and to achieve and to be when they graduate. So we view the achievement gap broader than a standardized test score.
Well, and I think that's part of it for us because achievement's very important to us, and it can be in that way, but I think we have to be able to see.
And this is where BAR is coming in. We are introducing BAR through Ann Park's recommendation, Dr. Park's. We asked for permission to put BAR into the A&I plan, and we're one of the first districts to do so because it reaches all students. We are going to be expanding BAR with the support of the A&I plan to 10th grade, and then looking at 11th and 12th. There are also conversations about what it would look like in the elementary. You can't just put funds into something without showing some growth or pattern that it's working working. So we couldn't put bar all in the program to say, let's do it in 1 year. That's just not feasible or sustainable. So you have to start somewhere, see the results you get, see how you build, and then build upon that, just like we did with AVID. And so that's our intention with bar, is to continue to support that through A&I, because bar could not be supported in a sustainable way for the high school without A&I support moving forward. So that's one of the plans, to reach all students. And it wouldn't necessarily stop at just the high school, but we have to make sure that it's worth the investment.
Right, which I apologize, maybe I said it wrong. I think for us, we have to, part of our job is to be able to measure achievement in regards to closing the achievement gap. I think that's maybe where where I don't see quite enough measure, and so I don't know in the plan, like, how are we gonna know if we hit this? Is it doing everything we want to make sure that we're doing all we can to close the achievement gap? That's more where my question is coming from.
And can I just say, that's why I said, how do we define success? To me, is still, that's an unanswered question, because I think they're not aligned. It isn't. That's why we're confused. Is if the vision is much broader than just MCA scores, okay, great, that's great, but let's lay that out clearly so we all know. So we all know, so the community knows, so everyone understands what that actually looks like, you know?
And I think that's where, you know, we have on your list, the results policy is, until we change it, how we define success. That is a board-approved policy with information in there about what the past boards have said is success in this district. So we do have that. We have it on your list to take a look at that and think how you might want to revisit it. In the past, that and some of you worked on that, so I wasn't here when it was created. It's been expanded since then. But when you look at that results policy, it really is focused on whole child. It has the MCAs in there. We know that our community looks at those. They're a snapshot in time, but it's not looking at the whole child. And so that results policy is really the way for the board to guide this work. If you want that to look differently, that should be one of the main things that we get on your calendar soon, because that drives our work and will continue to drive our work until we have a different policy.
If I can add one more piece to it, and I'm really grateful at the complexity and depth of the conversation. You have the quantitative, but it's really important because traditionally as a district, we haven't done a good job with the qualitative, hearing the stories of our traditionally underserved students and families and what they have to say about the programming. So I just want to make sure that that's included. You've heard from so many of them, you know, that their lived experience, whether it's in AVID programming, whether it's Assalamu Alaikum, our parents that are part of the family and community engagement programming, I really want to invite you to start to engage in some connections with those groups as well so that you can hear their truth. Because the quantitative data that we're getting from them is that the programming is working and they are grateful.
Thank you. Did you have something? I think all of this is, you know, I'm glad you said you appreciate the conversation. I do. I feel like this is important. That if we want to improve anything, we have to be willing to open up and say things that are not always easy to say, and, you know, ask questions when we're confused and when we need more information. And I feel like this is a really valuable program. It's doing a lot of good for a lot of people. And I think there is a strong feeling on some of the board members that we could even be doing more. And I'm pretty sure that every board member up here would like to see us do even better for all students, not just one section, but all students. And so this is something that's on our radar. It's something we want to keep focusing on, and we're probably not going to stop asking about it. So as far as this goes, I really do want to keep up. I think we need to keep having this conversation.
Absolutely.
And I feel like in some ways, this 3-year plan, even though we started a little bit earlier than we did last time, I think it would be great if we could start even earlier. So if you have, the next time this comes around, it has to be done by March 15th. Let's start the conversation in August. And let's have multiple meetings where we can actually say, okay, what's working well? What do we need to change? What can we throw out? I mean, this is very exciting what's happening with BAR. And I really want to keep up with what's happening, how that's working as we go forward. That is really innovative. That is. It's pretty cool. And I think it's going to help our kids. So. Anybody else have anything else they would like to say? Elise?
I guess I just have a question. What exactly happens if this does not pass tonight?
Well, we have the next board meeting, which Superintendent Petrelli is at March 5th. 5th. If it would not pass at March 5th, we'd be missing the deadline for the Minnesota Department of Education submission of plans, in which case the board would have to work with Dr. Ann Parks and engage in conversation about could we still access the 1.85 million funding, and could we get the plan to pass before July 1. It would be a process that it would have to be worked out with the board and MDE.
And just to be really transparent about that, we've worked with Dr. Ann Parks during all of this. You know, there have been numerous back and forth communications, and she is very supportive of the plan as it stands. So.
All right, anyone else? Are we ready to vote? All in favor of the Achievement and Integration Plan as presented, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay. Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda is the demographic study, and I will turn it over to Director Hoheisel.
Thank you, Board Chair Stivlin, Superintendent Pontrelli, school board members. At the January 15th school board work session, consideration was given to procure services to complete a demographic study. At the school board meeting on, I believe it was February 6th, the business meeting, there were 3 proposals in front of the board. The board received copy of those, and I was given the direction to go back and do some reference checks, of which I believe the board has been provided. And so I'm just going to turn it over for board conversation at this time, as I believe I have completed what has been asked of me. Of course, I'm available for questions.
All right then, board members, we have a decision in front of us of whether to choose to have another demographic study, and if so, then we need to decide who we would like to have conduct this study. We have 3 choices: Davis Demographic, Hazel Reinhardt Consulting, and Teamworks International. Could we have a brief conversation first?
Chair Stivlin, Can I just share, a good question came up about this, and you stated it exactly right as you read the statement. It is really about who you want to use. The board will still determine and have conversation about when, as you align your work on a referendum and your boundaries and all those other things that you're going to be considering. So I think some people are interested in, does it happen right now? Not necessarily. You'll choose who you want, and then you'll have the conversation about when, and then we'll do some backward planning, because most companies take a couple of months to get you the information. So just to clarify.
Mike, I'm a little bit confused by that, because I thought that part of the reason why we're doing this is because we're about to embark on a conversation that could potentially involve the boundary changes.
Right, but I think some have said, well, is this going to happen right away today? You can still have a conversation. I think laying all this out and how you need to phase in everything for this might be something you want to do. So
time is an option as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Somewhat.
So,
right. Somewhat.
whether
you don't have
we-
years, you have weeks.
The first question is whether we have a demographic report. Second, if that's a yes, which one? Third, we also have the possibility of deciding to do it at a later date, not right now.
You don't need to vote on that. That would
But
just
we
be.
could just be
right.
open-ended.
You really just, if you decide for somebody, then you're going forward, obviously, with the demographic report. So it's
Okay.
just the one question.
Okay, Director Pearson?
Thank you. Can I just ask board members, because to me, I think we only have data through 2024, which gets us about to what the bond would pass, and then that's it. So to me, I don't know is it even a question of whether or not. I feel like as we make decisions about what the bond's going to be, we need to have this data in front of us so that we know what we need to do. Do others feel differently than that?
Well, I don't know that I feel differently, but maybe I'd like to explore that question a little more. What do we anticipate getting out of this study. We do have, I believe that we did a study, we got it updated as of, I think, December 2018, a little over a year ago, from TeamWorks. And so I guess my question is, among the board, is kind of what do we seek to accomplish with this?
Can I? Because I think that's a good question. And I think, if I understand right from the recommendation that was brought tonight from Cunningham, I think the plan will help us meet our anticipated need for 2024, but we know we're going to keep growing past that. And so we don't know how far, how fast. And I'm afraid if we only have through 2024, and we only have room for the kids we have in 2024, we're going to be scrambling to figure out what to do right after that, is what it seems to me. I mean, it seems to me what their plan is bringing us is pretty close to exactly how many kids we think we're going to have then, without any room for more growth.
I think that's a really good question. It's a question I've had because I feel like some of these demographic reports are like really broad, big picture sort of trends, and they don't give enough detail in like what's actually happening on the ground. And I just happened to come across the Lake Elmo Planning Commission meeting from January 13th. They were updating their 2040 plan for the Met Council, and they've got changes. And I mean, this is Lake Elmo. Right now, in 2020, there are about 2,700 homes, a little over, almost 3,000 homes in Lake Elmo. By the end of this decade, in 2030, there are going to be another 3,800. Double. Lake Elmo double between now and the next 10 years. And in the next 10 years after that, another 6,500. So double again. Lake Elmo is going to be very, very, very big population. So this is going to continue to be, you know, on the ground. And they're updating it to down to the household, how many houses are going to be on a septic and which how are sewered and unsewered and that sort of thing. So that's just one town. And that's data they have that they can talk to us directly, like here's what we see happening right now. And I've had this conversation with Director Hoheisel, you know, this isn't the whole big picture. Obviously, this is just one piece of it. But I want to make sure whatever we get, it does actually give us up-to-the-minute information because it is constantly changing. And obviously, that's just Lake Elmo. We have Woodbury, you know, we have Hugo is also about to explode. So, you know, this is what we need.
Thank you for stating that. I mean, your point is well taken. I obviously know, I live there, I see it every day. It definitely backs the recommendation of the CDT with the schools.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I'm of the same mindset. The timing, I don't know that I'm on board with. I really feel like I want to think about the timing of it and when we need it, when it's appropriate. I could make a recommendation. I could just get the ball rolling and make a recommendation on make a motion on one of the consultants, if you want to go down that road or keep talking about it.
Quick question first.
Yes. Chris, I'm sorry. When it says other products on the right-hand side of Davis demographics, are those things that are just additional if we want? It doesn't mean those things we have to purchase in addition to year 1, 2, 3.
That's correct. That's actually referencing, they have, their other products is essentially what is equivalent to what we have as Guide K-12, which it takes our student system and you can map it out by houses, and that's how we do our boundary work. That's their version of what we already have. So yes, that's true. It's a separate item.
But it'd be optional, right?
It would be.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, that was all.
No, it's all right.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good question because, yeah, the Guide K-12, that seems like a really good tool, and we already have it. I've heard it's just incredible information, so that will be helpful. Do you want to make a motion?
I'll just get it going.
Go for it.
I move to approve Hazel Reinhardt Consulting Services at as our vendor when we're ready to move forward with the study upon further discussion and consideration.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Director Pearson seconds the proposal of Hazel Reinhardt. Any further discussion or questions? Director Burns?
I guess I'm still not quite clear on our goal. I understand, so I appreciate, Shelley, your discussion about, well, we don't know what is going to happen certainly after 2024. I mean, I don't know that we exactly know what's going to happen in about a year, but I'm wondering, and maybe this goes to the timing question too. I know that one need that we have is we're going to be likely be having discussions about boundary changes coming later on this year, and having updated information would be of value to that committee. But we do have some data already, so I'm still a little bit. If we're looking at data beyond 2024, which is always, I mean, the more information we have, the better. I agree with that. I just want to be sure that, I mean, certainly the longer we wait, the more clear and accurate the data is going to be about the future. That's not to say that it isn't valuable to us now, too. But I want to make sure that whatever we are going to pursue is going to bring us, I guess I want to be made comfortable that what we're going to get out of this is going to be of value to us now.
Well, so can I?
Good point.
I don't know that I completely understood that, because I heard two separate things there that because I agree with this, wait until we're, I do think it's good to wait on it, to be honest with you, to see where we're at. We've got some information right now, but then get the best information right now. So that's where I'm a little confused by that. And then just to piggyback on that, I had your same concern that you just presented, and I talked to Kristen. We talked on the phone about this, because I said, why are we doing this right now? What is the need for this right now? So could you maybe speak to how you answered the question about if whomever we choose, that it's kind of good to have it at the ready, and have whomever we choose bring in, say it's Hazel Reinhardt, that process is streamlined better. We don't have to go through this process. Is that accurate?
So to address, maybe I'll back it up a little bit and say, what do we typically use the demographic data for? And again, then the board can decide you have it in your workings, but what does, as we're working through the office every single day, what are we using that information for? One of the things is what we talked about tonight at the work session is the budget assumptions. That committee is always looking at the next 3 years. We can see the trends. So, whether it was essentially a 10-year plan, and then we coupled it, which was Hazel's, and then we coupled it with the TeamWorks information, and it helps you kind of assess or evaluate at least what your financial picture can reasonably look like as we move forward. To Director Pearson's point, we have through 2024. So we have 1 more year as far as the budget assumptions go, and then we would kind of be left on our own. Again, is that an immediate need? Maybe not. That's an area of which we use a demographic study. Another area where we would use the demographic study, and I think of why Hazel's was done the first time, would have been part of the 15 or the long-term facility committee that Director Weisberg served on. There was that information to help you develop a 10-year plan to be used as we went out to the voters. I mean, it was, I think you probably had that information going into committee. I might be mistaken, but I'm guessing you did, given the timing. And then plans were formulated around that. And so where are we in the CDT process? And is that ball already moved a little bit where,
Right, that was,
it may or may not be there? Then kind of as we wrap it up, the boundaries, right? So we're looking at boundaries, and we can tell where our kids are today, and we can tell if we move certain areas what it's going to look like. We can certainly reach out to the areas that we know there's growth, right? You saw tonight during the CDT presentation where the heat map, like we can project those boundaries, or like maybe areas that are going to bring more kids, and do our best estimate with that. So those are things we use it for. I would like to say, even since the teamwork study was completed in December of 2018, there has been significant changes. And so, Sarah, to your point, we're never going to have live time. We're just never going to have it. A demographic study is intended for planning purposes. That's what we use it for. It's not, where we can be reactionary in the moment. So that's why I guess I'll turn it back to the board, and I think I talked about this when it was presented on the 6th, of what do you want out of it? What are you looking for? Because that's really the question. Those are the tools, that's how we use it. What are you looking to use it for?
Okay.
Given that.
There's a cross-section of those two also. When you're talking about boundaries, one of the guiding change documents from the past said to try limit families so that they don't have multiple changes within about 5 years. So their child who's in elementary isn't changing boundaries a couple of times. You need to look at that. And when you think of your forward-thinking facilities, an example that I might bring forward is what happened with Brookview. Brookview was built to 450, and before we even occupied it, we knew that it needed to be 650. If you have a demographic projection that says, we're going to need that 650, you're probably going to want to share that with your voters ahead of time instead of building for 450 and then a year later going out and saying 650. Right. So it's the boundaries and it's that facility. If we decide, when you make the decision about the facility, as we work through that, we can arrange the boundaries so that there are less changes for our families and less transitions. So it's kind of those two things together.
Well, and if I can just piggyback one more thing, and that's exactly what we did last time. There was intent on filling schools to close to 100% of ideal capacity, because at that time, it presented as no growth. I mean, even Afton Lakeland, it's like you put as many kids in those buildings to leave Lake Elmo at 80-some% capacity to allow for the growth. And that's how that plays into boundaries, is you just can really anticipate. We have to leave enough space for 5 years for these homes to develop.
Right, thank you. And I think that hits a lot of where I'm at, is that, when we see the recommendation to build a new Lake Elmo 450, expandable to 650, I think we might just need to start at 650. And so I think to get those results, and I think, Krista, we talked about if we were thinking about doing the bond for 2020, that we'd have to have everything figured out by January. Is it the same if we're doing it in 2021, that we need to know kind of what our plan is?
It's really important to get your message out very early in the 2020 year, because you'd be competing with all the presidential messaging. I think in a typical year, it's usually the spring of the year that you want to start to have some of those conversations and the planning. It's really then in the fall when you can get out heavy with your messaging right prior to the election. Certainly with the community, it's the sooner the better, so that you can start getting the messaging out, right. But I wouldn't say you have quite the same urgency you would.
So with boundaries, we need that sooner rather than later, right? And then right on the tail of that will be the bond and how we want that to look. So I even think we don't have a ton of time to sit and wait, that we're going to need that information to know, are we on the right track with the bond? Are we too far away from where we need to be with that? And then I think you're right, we need both and. We can't do either or. We have to continue with this. Unfortunately, Dr. McDowell will have to keep doing all that research about where we're at.
Yeah.
Well, maybe then the next question is pros and cons about Hazel Reinhardt versus the other options.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, they're more expensive than one option and less expensive than another. But we do have some data from TeamWorks. I believe that our study from Hazel Reinhardt now is several years old.
I think it was 2010, wasn't that original one?
15.
Original 13, updated in 15.
Oh, 2013, yeah.
Okay. And I think my take on it is that those predictions have been fairly good. It's always difficult, but I think they have turned out to be fairly accurate from her. But so I don't know what other thoughts on the board are about the other options.
The feedback that we got from some other districts who have used all these different companies was pretty positive for Hazel Reinhardt as well. So, yeah, I was originally more of a fan of TeamWorks because it's the cheapest. But I'd be fine with Hazel Reinhardt as well. I think she did a good job before. So.
Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot.
No,
but
you're fine.
Where I feel, because I think we get good information from TeamWorks, I think they do more just pulling data that's already out there and a little less predicting what's going to come in other ways. I think they don't look as much at neighborhood turnover and things like that. I think they do contact and find out what's the growth going to be, but I think they don't do as much. I feel like they more are like gathering data so that we can have it all in one place.
Yeah, and if I could just speak, agreed. And the reason for the motion with Hazel, I think, first of all, TeamWorks does a fine job as well. And yes, they're a little less expensive. I honestly went with the middle price point, and I remember that Hazel, I did. That was my first, meet in the middle, because they're not incredibly different a little bit, but I do feel that Hazel did a fine job for that, as did TeamWorks. But I just liked I like the work that she did. I remember that. I remember it being positive. Nothing is perfect, so.
It felt comprehensive.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? So we have a proposal, we have a motion and a second to go with Hazel Reinhardt. I would like to add that I think in her proposal, she said it could be done by May. I think we're going to need it by then. I think we should go ahead and do it now, because it is going to lead into our boundary conversation, I think, and it's going to help us prepare for the bond that's coming up. And I don't know. Does anybody else have any thoughts? I guess we don't have to decide that right now. But
I agree, and yet I'm just a little. I would like to push it as much as we can, only because the more we push it, the more accurate, all of the updates with the councils and the planning commissions, and that's honestly the only reason that as long as we can push it out, I feel like we'll have the most up to date as we get closer to the bond.
Oh, okay.
And actually, with that comes a question: is how long is it going to take her to present that's in here? And I didn't see it.
A few months.
Okay, so I feel like that's okay, palatable.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But boundary conversations are starting when?
So what the committee has established for it in conversation in concert with you, the board, is that you would do your work sometime between now and mid-April. Committee would start convening at the end of April. We would essentially plan on, and I know the vast majority of our work would be done by the beginning of September. We'd have community conversations in October just to allow people to settle into the new school year. And then it would be up for a board decision in November.
Yeah, that's the only thing that makes me think, like, let's just go ahead and
get
it done.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just really quick. Which consulting group was it that said basically we have 1.9% of an overall decline?
That was TeamWorks.
That was TeamWorks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And I would just follow up on the timing. I think if we are going to proceed with this, that I think that data will be valuable for the boundary discussions.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're going to proceed with it, I would want to do it soon.
Yeah, and actually, to be more accurate, Hazel Reinhardt predicted a decline as well.
That's what my question was.
Right, both of them did. Yeah. But I mean, things have changed, clearly. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, are we ready to vote then? All right, all in favor of having a demographic report conducted by Hazel Reinhardt Consulting, raise your right hand and say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
All right. We have 2 against. Did you get that?
I did. And am I to understand that I enter into that agreement and I proceed immediately?
I think so, yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. Are we done? We have board member reports. Board chair, I don't have anything right now, so let's go to working group reports. Community engagement.
We actually met.
All right.
It took a while to get everybody on the same page, and we set our calendar, and I think those meetings are all posted to the end of the year. And we talked about different things that are upcoming that we can all reach out as a board. There are some senior groups that I think have an opportunity to see Beauty and the Beast coming up, and board members, if could be there to greet, would be wonderful. I completely did not bring my notes with me, so I'm kind of going by memory here. Krista, jog my brain if I forget anything. But I know that was the next thing. There's an ALC graduation tomorrow at 11 o'clock.
There's the Jessie Diggins book signing.
Jessie Diggins book signing, thank you so much. And that's April 5th, which is a Sunday, but it's at the high school, right, at 3. And that's an opportunity for people to come. Also, if board members would like to be present, she's going to be there to sign books. I think you can get the books at Valley Bookseller, which is amazing that she's coming back to the high school, and that should be an awesome event for a lot of people.
Can I just add something to that? My understanding is that the tickets for that event are free. You have an option to purchase a book for whatever that is. It's fairly reasonable. But that she also has another event in some other part of the Twin Cities, and the tickets are very expensive for it. I mean, like $100 or something. So we have, because she's from this area, we have an opportunity to see her for free.
Wow. That's awesome. Very neat. That's awesome. That's very cool.
I think that might be, I'm sorry, hang on one second, I found my notes. I'm so sorry. Okay, and we'll be reaching out to board members to know if other people are interested in reading in the schools. I think in the past, PTAs have reached out and asked us, but I think it's something that we all thought board members really enjoyed. And Chris, I think, was going to talk to elementary schools to say that that's something that we wanted to do, and we would embrace that. Hold on one second. Our new liaisons to schools start now and will go to the end of the summer. We kind of talked briefly about Summer Tuesdays, different festivals in the summer to have a presence in the community, which ones we would want to focus on. There's a Woodbury Realtor Developer event that I believe Denise is going to talk next Thursday at 7:30. And we basically talked about different festivals that we could do. And then we talked about demographers for a little bit. Oh, and there's a website, that was the other thing. February 26th, between 5 and 7:30 at Oak Park, the district is redesigning their website and is getting community feedback on how best to do that. I think there are parents that are going to be there, and there are going to be students, and I think free pizza.
When is it again?
I do want to stress that was by invitation.
Oh, sorry.
People in the community, I apologize. I just don't want to have,
Then never mind. February 26th at Oak Park between 5 and 7:30. I'm so sorry. I didn't realize it was an Forget about the pizza. That's it for me.
That's it for me. Great. Thank you. We have finance and operations.
So we met today. Let's see. We talked a little bit about the responses for transportation, and we are seeking to know whether if we can get feedback on with or without terminal, considering the situation we're in at the moment, what our options would be moving forward. Let's see. We had a good meeting today. We matrixed for an auditor today. And we kind of came to a unanimous decision on that, and I'll be presenting that next board meeting. I think looking ahead, we're going to look at architect RFPs and review those responses. And then the next meeting, we're also going to discuss the district service consultants and really kind of hone in on what our schedule should be as we work through all of those too.
Is that the list that we were talking about last time?
That's the list.
Good,
We're
good,
on
good,
it.
Good. I'm glad you're following up on that. Cool.
That's it. I'm done.
All right. Legislative. Do we have anything?
Mike's gone.
No, Mike's
We're
not
gonna
here.
meet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could just say one thing that Mike and I went to the AMSD meeting, which was a week ago Friday. We heard from, there was a panel of 4 legislators who were there. And they had first they presented and then they took questions from the audience about what the platform is going to be for this year. And it was a fairly spirited conversation because it was a cross-section of the legislature. There were both Republicans and Democrats there, and so it was a fairly spirited conversation. Looks like they will be kind of finalizing their platform for this session, and then I believe that coming up on, if I think I have the date right, March 24th is the C at the Capitol Day. And so we're going to be meeting on that to have that organized, but to keep that date on your calendar for the C at the Capitol. We go there with C, and I think last year I wasn't part of this, but there were quite a few people that went from the district, and it was
The biggest numbers.
Yeah.
It's fun. I'm going again.
Yeah. Yep. Is that it?
Yep.
Okay. And then policy. I think that's you again.
All right, I can take that. So we met about a week and a half ago. We mostly looked at the student surveys. We're looking at that based on some feedback that we received from the community, as well as the school board code of conduct policy 209. We had some discussion about that. We're going to continue to get some feedback on that. Our next meeting is this coming Tuesday, the 25th at 7:30. We're going to, if we receive any comments on the 100 series policies that were first reading for today, we'll certainly take that into consideration. Then we're going to continue our discussion on student surveys, code of conduct, and we're also going to really try to get into the 600 series policies, which include the school district accountability, which kind of encompasses then the results policies that Superintendent Pontrelli mentioned earlier in the meeting. We really want to put that as a priority for review.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you very much. Board member reports. Who wants to start? Should we start down here?
We sure can.
All right.
I lost my sheet, so I'm going to wing it. I just wanted to give a little shout out to the folks at, there's the, oh my goodness sake, Youth Advantage. Youth Advantage has their big fundraiser coming up. It's called Mardi Gras. It is February 28th at 6:30 p.m. It's at the Seven Vines Vineyard, and they're still taking reservations for this. It is really their premier fundraiser. They do absolutely incredible work for our kids. They put so much of their time and direct impact on our students of need. So I just can't say enough about them, and I hope we can all try to, recruit friends or attend ourselves. And if you want to look into this, it's www.youthadvantage.org, and I think you can just look that up and get more information on that. But again, it's February 28th, coming up at 6:30. The only other thing I wanted to say was I just wanted to give a sincere shout out to Rachel Stile and the Pony Express students. Honestly, on every level, they work really hard in their students, and I just can't, I'm so proud of Rachel's work and honestly how she puts her heart and soul in it, and I know she's inspiring journalists and students, and it's amazing to see. And for me, in this role that we're in, my biggest source of joy is when I can see students grow and do really big things and feel empowered to use their voices. It's the thing that makes me happiest. So I just wanted to end with that. Thank you to her for everything she does for this district.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Thank you.
Just really quick, I know Superintendent Pontrelli mentioned it, but ALC graduation tomorrow at 11. I think a lot of us will be there. It's exciting. And then the only other thing is I attended middle school conferences this week, and bless the teachers, because it's a long, very long day to go every 5 minutes and try to say something meaningful, but they are amazing staff, and I appreciate all the work that they do.
Thank you. I don't have anything.
I don't have anything.
Actually, I do. Tomorrow, sorry. Planning to go to the Youth Advantage Mardi Gras. I haven't signed up yet, but I just realized today that the deadline for getting tickets is the 23rd, so I've got to get on it. I don't know if anybody else is going. That is a really fun event.
It's a lot of fun.
Very, very fun.
It's a lot of fun, yes.
And then tomorrow night, 916 Foundation is having their gala. So that's like our partnership plan. And they're raising money for the Cora. The Cora is their ALC, one of their ALC programs. And they want to invest in new music instruments for those students. They don't have enough to have a really robust program. So it's a very good cause, and I will be going to that as well, and I'm looking forward to it. I think that's all I have. Go ahead.
I have nothing.
Okay.
I went to a partnership plan meeting last month. I believe next week is another partnership plan meeting, and people from the Pathways Plan came and asked partnership to basically help them get it started. And I think we heard tonight that we're going to take over eventually, but partnership plan is having a huge part in starting that program, and I think everybody is very excited about it, and people in the community are very excited about it, and it's wonderful that they are giving their efforts to support something that's going to be really valuable in our district. That's it.
Thanks. I want to start out with a shout out to the Stillwater High School Unified Basketball Team.
Oh, right.
Yes. Who finished second place at the state tournament, the first annual state tournament, but this is put on by the Special Olympics of Minnesota. And I mentioned it at the last meeting that Paula Harrison is really organizing this for the district to have a unified sports program at the high school. And so it was a very successful event for the basketball team. So congratulations to them. I also wanted to mention that the district is participating in the Youth Art Month student exhibition at the state capitol. It's running from February 17th through the 29th. We have several students from our district who are participating. My family visited, and it's fantastic art that is there. And you can see the students that are participating from Stillwater, but that's exhibited at the state capitol during that time. And my last thing I just want to mention again, my appreciation for the community design team, the work that everyone put into that, and culminating in an extremely professional presentation. I very, very much appreciate that, and I think the district should appreciate that. The community should appreciate the work that went into it, as well as the presentation for it. I certainly anticipate that it will provide tremendous value for us.
All right. Thank you very much. We are adjourned.
Goodness gracious.